Hi, everybody. Good evening. We're going to go ahead and get started. It's 5:30. No, it's okay. Just trying to get started. That's okay. Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to this evening's Board of Education meeting. This is our regularly scheduled board meeting, and this is also our annual organizational meeting for December 14th, 2022. So I'd like to call this meeting to order and establish a quorum.
Board President Sarah Hines.
Yes.
Board Clerk Tess Arthur.
Yes.
Board Member Anne Marie Rosen.
Yes.
Board Member Seabury Nockbar.
Yes.
Board Member Carl Palestrini.
Yes.
I'd like to notify our audience that this session this evening will be recorded and streamed for those of you that would like to view it afterwards. And may I please receive a motion to adopt the agenda?
I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
Board President Sarah Hines.
Yes.
Board Clerk Tess Arthur.
Yes.
Board Member Anne Marie Rosen.
Yes.
Board Member Seabury Nockbar.
Yes.
Board Member Carl Palestrini.
Yes.
All right. Mr. Jack Norman for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. I'd also like to notify our audience that we have our translators here this evening translating the meeting. So if anybody here needs that service, we have it. Thank you so much. Agenda item E, this is our student representative, ACT, CSCA comments, Board of Education and Superintendent routine status updates regarding campus activities, meeting schedules, conferences, meetings attended, and any recent developments. So we'll start with you, Jack, as our student representative.
Thank you. I wanted to start off by saying I had a great time at the California School Board member conference in San Diego. It was a very educational experience, and I just wanted to thank the board and Dr. Knight for including me in that experience. Back in the district, the students are busy getting ready for our winter break and finals. There have been school spirit days leading up to winter break and finals where all the students dress in the same theme. Today was Candy Cane Day at the high school, so people wore red and white. And tomorrow is Twin Day, so students are pairing up tonight to find someone to wear a matching outfit with tomorrow. At Carmel Valley High, the kids are having a white elephant gift exchange to celebrate the holiday season. And next week, it is River School's turn for dress-up days. There will be Rudolph Day and Hat Day, and both River and Tular will have the most popular spirit day of all, Pajama Day, on the last day before break. At Carmelo, the kids and their teachers were amazed this week by the surfing magician and his magic act. He put on not one, but 2 shows for them. And winter sports are also underway. Basketball and soccer are off to a strong start. Theater at the high school is performing Arsenic and Old Lace, and you can catch the final show tomorrow night, so make sure to be there. And for music programs throughout the district, this is their time to showcase everything that the students have learned during their first half of the school year. At the middle school, there was a winter concert at the beginning of this month, and just last night, the middle school's Cougar Cubs string orchestra and band put on their own concert, which was excellent. Last week, the Kinder Band performed at Tularcitos. They sang songs in English and Spanish, including a song their music teacher created herself. And tomorrow, Tularcitos has its 5th grade winter concert. On Friday, Captain Cooper will have its Winter Sing. They're staying close to home this year and are having the Winter Sing in the amphitheater, and it will be amazing. The high school musicians also have their winter concert this Friday. River School has its string concert had its string concert yesterday, and next week is the River Band and Choir. They have their concert. Then at the end of the week, the strings, band, and choir will all come together for an assembly performance. The school district has also been sharing its musicians with the larger community. The Tular River and high school choirs and high school jazz workshop have been providing music for community tree lightings and other local community events this month in Carmel, Carmel Valley, and Monterey. We are very fortunate to have the district's emphasis on music and the arts. Less than 1 in 5 schools have a full-time music or art teacher. Hopefully this will change with the statewide passage of Prop 28. But we have 6 highly qualified full-time music teachers, which is absolutely amazing. Statistically, regardless of socioeconomic status, schools with music programs have higher test scores, higher graduation rates, and less disciplinary problems. So we are very grateful as individuals, as schools, and as a community for the priority our district has placed on the arts. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jack. Can't wait to remind my twins it's Twin Day tomorrow. See how that goes over. We'll move along to updates from our association representatives, Mr. Bill Schreier from Association of Carmel Teachers and Lisa Brazil from CSCA this evening. We'll start with you, Bill.
Started walking up here, so I'm aware that it's the organizational meeting and likely the end of 2 years of your tenure as the president of the board, and I want to acknowledge that, so I wrote something here. I'm just going to read it. I want to publicly thank you for your leadership to our district and service to the community over the past 2 years. It is undeniable that you ascended to the board presidency during the toughest times in our history. You did so without any prior experience in board leadership and as a relatively inexperienced board member. Despite that, you rose to the occasion, and your stewardship of the district during the darkest days has been exemplary. I also want to thank you for keeping your word about being open to what the association had to say. Your willingness to hear us out despite considerable resistance from former board members and a former superintendent is a testament to your integrity. I know we're all better off because of our open lines of communication. You also promised to represent the interests of all students, not just the interests of your own children. That's not easy, and yet you have done that as well as it could have been done. Finally, many times over the past 2 years, people have questioned your motives, attacked your integrity, and cast aspersions on your character. None of it was true, yet you didn't respond. You were resolute and remained dedicated to serving this district, even though many would have quit in the face of the onslaught. Simply put, we were lucky to have you at the helm during these past 2 years, and on behalf of the Association of Carmel Teachers, please accept my deepest gratitude.
Thank you so much, Bill. Speechless. Thank you very much. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. It's very unexpected. Wow. I'm a little taken back. Thank you so much for those kind words, Bill. And we'll welcome Lisa.
I just reminded Bill how much I hate following him on these meetings. I'm Lisa, the president of CSEA, and Sarah, I echo everything he said. CSEA, we don't have a lot to update. I did want to congratulate again Sarah and Tess on the election. I wanted to thank Jack. Jack, your updates to the board are some of the best I've ever heard, and you do a great job. Thank you so much for putting the time that you do into that.
Thank you.
I just wanted to make my annual request to parents. We're all heading into winter break, and lots of people are sick between the flu and COVID and RSV. Our absentee rates are enormous, but please keep your children home if they're sick. We're trying to keep our teachers and our staff healthy, and so that we can all come back after the break healthy and ready for the last semester. So thank you for paying attention to that, and I hope everyone has a wonderful break. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa. All right, so we'll start with the Board of Education updates, and we'll start with you, Carl, and go around.
Okay, well, Lisa's dilemma is following Bill, but mine is following this guy, Jack, over here, who is far more articulate, better prepared. I could go on and on. Well, maybe I should be bringing him a gift. Anyway, so there's that. I did attend the Carmel Middle School Spider Fest festival, which was very cool, done out in the Habitat. And, if you visit all the tables, you get prizes. And I have a spider necklace, which I decided not to wear tonight. And I have a zipper with a big spider on it, which is kind of cool, zipper pull. But anyway, as I was telling some of my board members, as I went around the tables there, they have a big sign that says spiders are our friend. And so there's this 6th grade lad with his own tarantula. And I thought, well, I said, I don't think they are. And he goes, really? And I said, I don't know one spider that thinks I'm his friend. And he said to me, you really need to do some homework before we have this discussion. 6th grade. Well, he had a good point. I asked him where to start. There's Dave Doyle at the high school doing the shop program, and I got to tell you, folks, there's nothing more beautiful than a Chevy Blazer 4x4 transfer case, completely disassembled, with all of the bearings and synchros and everything. Wouldn't you agree, board? Yeah, they're with me. They're with me on this. But anyway, this guy, he's terrific. He really is. We got the right guy in there. And finally, for me, the Host Lands Club yesterday, Carmel Host Lands, very old club, about, I think, 60, 70 years old in Carmel. So I was speaking to them and had lunch with them, and that was most enjoyable. So that's pretty much it.
Great. Thank you, Carl. Seabury?
Yeah, I just have a few updates. I have been able to participate in a number of JV girls basketball, which is super fun. And I just appreciate the coaches, and it's a lot of work, and I really appreciate all the time that these coaches put into it. Yesterday, I was able to organize with a lot of help, organize a parent working group to focus on environmental sustainability issues. And we had a good group of parents that showed up at the Habitat, and we're moving forward. And thank you, Dr. Knight and Jessica, for your support in that and helping us move that forward. I look forward to doing more of that over the year. And then lastly, I just wanted to give a quick report out. I had mentioned it at our last board meeting, but we had a really phenomenal training that we provided for Carmel Unified School District, PG, Salinas, Monterey, called Body Positive Training. And it was about focusing on, at a young age, having young people just be comfortable with their bodies, and how we have such a narrow definition of what is a beautiful body image, and why we look at art and we look at nature, and how diverse our opinion and thought of what a beautiful thing is in art and nature, and why can't we do that with bodies too? So it was a great training. We had a pretty good turnout, and I look forward to doing more of these types of trainings within the district. And that's it. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Seabury. Your event sounds great. Anne Marie?
Hello, CSBA conference, California School Board Association in San Diego. I went with Jack and enjoyed the plane trip up and got to chit chat. Had a great time. We have now secret language going on back and forth. And I did bring treats for everyone here. So I'd like to thank Ted, Trisha Zarovich, and Michelle for setting things up and making sure that I felt included in all the activities. I was able to attend about 4 sessions a day and hit topics like CTE, workforce housing, raising DNFs, grades, mental health for students and staff. Got a chance to walk around the exhibit floor and made a nuisance of myself to poor Dan Paul over there and saying, "Did you see the electric school bus? Did you see the electric school bus?" And he was like, "No, it won't work for us." And I'm like, but. Anyway, I was having fun. I like to see those kinds of things, Carl, in addition to the engines, you know me. I got a chance to speak with some colleagues from Gonzales, North Monterey County, MPC, and Monterey County School Boards about relevant topics while I was down there. I sat in for Tess. You have big shoes to fill, Tess, and Community Human Services. And they discussed the opening of the Schumann Heart House in Monterey, which is a center for women and children who are destitute and need a place to a safe space. Said goodbyes to some of the old staff and hellos to new staff, and heard about the status of the programs and funding, which we had a presentation on a couple of months ago. Carmel Middle School Winter's Concert was a smattering of holiday and ethnic music. It was amazing concert. I had such a great time. I was in front of a couple of parents who had their children who were featured, and the parents were just gushing. They were just you could see go, oh my God, my child. It was wonderful to see, and congratulations to everybody. It was truly an amazing concert. The drug and alcohol presentation at Carmel High School, it was a particularly hard one for me since I have had family members who have died from drug and alcohol related addictions. The takeaway that I had from that was love and caring. And 8 to 10 hours of sleep for your children, good nutrition, physical movement are musts, and good quality family time, whether it's at the dinner table or something else, to have good quality family time. So thank you, Sarah, and the rest of the admin for setting that up. It was amazing, and I look forward to future presentations. Carmel High School was a campus I got a chance to visit, and I saw John Lyons. It's always lovely to talk about education and the culture at Carmel High School. I'm going to have an ad here for Arsenic and Old Lace. If you haven't seen it, don't know anything about it, you should see it. It's a drama, but it's got hilarity to it, and I cannot imagine how the students are going to portray the two old maiden aunts. I need to see that one. So that's tomorrow night in the Black Box, not the big theater, but the Black Box around the back. And I'm going to leave you with this quote that I found. I thought this was a good one. Society grows great when old people plant trees, the shade of which they know they will never sit. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Tess?
Yeah, I also attended the CSBA conference, and it was a great opportunity to spend time with several employees in the district and get to know them, as well as members of our governance team. And hearing from school board members across the state of California, we've all faced similar issues, and it's nice to hear about what has worked for them and their best practices, as well as learning what is happening at the state level in education. Heard from many motivational speakers, including Brandon Fleming, who shared his story of tremendous hardship and how a coach and later a teacher saved his life, with many inspirations along the way. He went on to become a Harvard debate coach for hundreds of underserved youth. And it just reiterates to me the impact our staff and our coaches have on our struggling students. And just by paying attention and leading with empathy and showing up for our kids, we can really make a difference. Another incredible speaker was Tara Westover, who wrote the book Educated. If you haven't read it, it's fantastic. She shared her story. She was raised in the hills of Idaho by a father who did not believe in public education, and so she never went to school. And when she finally did go to school, it was her passion for music, and she taught herself all the basics she needed to know to get her GED, and then she got into BYU and ended up getting a degree from there and her master's and PhD from Cambridge. It's a great book, so I highly recommend it. Couple of sessions I went to. I think I had a couple highlights, but one in particular was called Dear Trustee, put on by Bill Schreier, or not Bill Schreier. Bill, you should have been there. Jessica and Ted and Sarah and our lawyer, and talked about highlighting best practices when it comes to the flow of communication coming from a community or staff member. It was extremely well attended, and what spoke to me was clearly we have an intense need throughout the state for creating roadmaps for communication strategies and what works and what doesn't. The other one that I went to with Michelle, which really blew us both away, it was on Saturday morning, the last day, and it's called Kids Helping Kids. It was facilitated by two teachers from Del Campo High School up in Sacramento, and they're teaching a class on advanced entrepreneurialism that guides students through passion projects for a year. And it's a study. It satisfies world history, U.S. history, econ, and it facilitates a CTE pathway. And the theory is that students feel better by doing better, and it helps them to really engage in the world around them and pay attention to the needs of others. The teachers also travel to other districts doing a one-day training on civicology that promotes engagement, empathy, connection of school to community, collaborative problem solving using real-world applications through hands-on learning, and respectful civil discourse. I was blown away, and I wish Michelle could speak to it. But so many takeaways from this year's conference, primarily that there are many districts facing similar challenges, and we can all really learn and grow from each other. So that's it for me.
Thank you so much. I'll keep my comments short because I know we need to get through our agenda this evening. But first and foremost, I would like to thank everybody who attended our special meeting last week on stadium lights. So many community members and parents and students and staff came together, and all voices in the room that night were heard. So I would just like to extend my thanks to everyone who took the time to attend that meeting. We do appreciate hearing from everybody. I would also like to thank the addiction doctors and specialists who led the informational seminar, as Anne Marie mentioned, on fentanyl. And we also had somebody from Ohana there as well. And it was hands down the best session I have attended in a long time. It not only exposed how fentanyl is affecting addicts today, but it's also exposing what fentanyl is doing to casual drug users who buy drugs off the street. And I'm sure all of us can think of somebody that we know that's purchased drugs off the street, and it's just simply unsafe now. And many of us think that the fentanyl epidemic is not in our backyard. I can assure you that it is. The doctors shared a map of where all of the drug overdoses happened the night before, and you could see all along our dividing corridors, whether it's Carmel Valley Road or Highway 1, we could see where all of the overdoses were that called emergency services that night before. And it was really an eye-opening session. Unfortunately, I don't feel like the date and time worked well for everybody. So we're excited that the doctors are willing to come back and do a repeat of the presentation. So after the holiday break, we are going to survey the community and parents, and we really want to make sure that we get the date and time right where the majority of folks in our community can attend. And this time it will be via Zoom. So if that was an obstacle for people to come to the Performing Arts Theater at the high school, we want to make sure that we remove that. And we hope that everybody will attend via Zoom because it is really, really an eye-opener of a discussion. So thank you to Jessica. I know it was hurting cats trying to get on the doctor's schedules, and Ohana. It looks like we will, don't be shocked, but the doctors are booked. And it looks like we won't be doing the Zoom until March. So when you see dates that are far out, that is why. But I will say it really gave me a lot of solace that these addiction specialists that we heard from, they are the same doctors that are presenting to our high school students and our middle school students. So I think we were all taking a deep breath that our students are getting the right information from the right people about drugs that are out there. So again, thank you so much for pulling that together. And I will leave that as my updates, and I'll turn it over to you, Ted.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I want to start by thanking our student, staff, community, and the board for their participation in our special meeting on the Stadium Improvement Project. It was great to see so many students taking an active interest in their education, and I encourage our students to continue to feel empowered and to bring about the change that they need for their success. I also want to take a moment to thank our board president, Sarah Hines, for her facilitation of the meeting. Being a school board president in times like these is tough, but I thought she handled it with grace, strength, and courage. And I also want to thank our students and community for their passion and what I felt was very appropriate demonstrations of support for the causes that they value. I was also fortunate enough to be interviewed by several student journalists over the past few weeks on the topics of that special meeting, and I continue to be impressed with not only their professionalism, but the quality of the stories that they are putting out. Enjoyed meeting with both my staff and student advisory over the past couple weeks to gather input on our Portrait of a Graduate process, and want to remind the community that I'll be meeting with staff and community in this coming January to complete this part of our strategic direction process. Let's see. I've been able to get out to several schools and events recently. Myself, several staff members here tonight, and board members were able to see our high school dance recital. This included a capstone project from a couple of our students. And sorry, Jack, I know as much as you're looking forward to finals, I was really impressed as an educator to see that capstone, because I think performance assessment is truly how we measure student learning. And those young ladies just did a great job in their capstone. Was also able to catch the annual student staff volleyball game here at Carmel Middle School. As usual, the students and staff impressed me with how inviting and inclusive the school culture is. Made a school visit out to CCDC. It was great to see our early childhood educators working with their students. And as several of you have heard, the highlight of my week was getting to hang out in the infant room with the babies. For those of us that may be on, I don't know, the receiving end of some passion from members of our district, kind of seeing that unconditional love that you get from toddlers and babies is a really good feeling. So might end up doing that a little more often, maybe on Thursday mornings once a month. From a district perspective, I attended our monthly safety meeting, and Director of Student Services, Cassandra Zitkind, who is in the back there, is doing a great job of creating programs and practices that are both research-based and good for our staff and students. So really happy with the work that she's gotten done in a short amount of time. Also participated in a couple human resources screenings, both for the assistant to the superintendent's office and for our new director of CTE, which you may remember is coming about due to a partnership with Monterey Peninsula College and other local districts. We will house that person, get their work 20% of the time. The other 80% will be at MPC and across the county. We had a wonderful Thanksgiving potluck at the district office. I enjoyed breaking bread, may have eaten a few desserts, and just really getting to talk with my colleagues on a personal level. We also participated in a cabinet level retreat to prepare for our annual special board meeting in January, where we talk about the budget and get out and do our annual budget roadshow at all of our schools. Two final things I wanted to share in regard to district office. As was stated earlier, I was able to get to the CSBA conference with board members and staff. And yes, the highlight of my trip was presenting with Sarah, Jessica, and William Tunick from DWK. Also had the privilege of swearing in Sarah and Tess for their second terms in office last week. They were overwhelmingly supported by our community, and I look forward to working with them for many years to come. And then finally, I also had the privilege of attending the first parent series that we're hosting this year on drugs and alcohol awareness. Want to thank Sarah and Jessica for their work in bringing these topics to the community, and again agree it was very valuable. And we certainly need our community to be, I think, further educated. I can tell you as a parent and an educator, I learned things that I had no idea were going on in our community. And something as simple as what we can do, just carrying Narcan with us to help others, was very powerful. So I'm looking forward to that Zoom presentation coming up in March. That's all I've got.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for everybody's updates this evening. We'll go ahead and we'll move along to public comment. This is where members of the public may address the board regarding items on the open session agenda or topics within the board's jurisdiction that are not on the agenda at this time. The board is committed to maintaining a respectful and productive environment that fosters a culture of civility where our staff, community, and the board feel safe to express themselves. So each person that's joining us in public comment will have 3 minutes tonight, and we will start public comment with number 13. And I should mention, if you are here for public comment, please take a ticket from the red ticket dispenser.
Good evening. Glad to be able to be here tonight and hear what you're all up to. It's really, as a parent and a local resident here, we don't always know exactly what the board is doing, so I'm happy to hear all this progress. And I just wanted to offer a strong suggestion. Ted, you were talking about student empowerment. Tess, you were talking about civicology. I really think those are super important. I think one of the most important things of this education, especially middle school and high school level, is really allowing the students to have practice being citizens, practice with the world, practice with their voice, practice speaking up. And last year I had the pleasure of working at the high school as an aide, and it was really just an amazing experience to hear the student voice. There had been some issues that came up last year, hate speech on campus, and there was many clubs that came up, Culture Club, Jewish Food and Culture Club. There was a feminist club. There was also an anti-hate task force. I sat in on many of them and was just amazed at how articulate our students are, how much they really put into speaking with each other and, getting together, and they really do want some avenue for social change. So I'm hoping that there can be a lot more urge to give them those avenues. It sounds like you're all looking into that, but really just to keep that on like the forefront, happening fast, especially when events like last year happen and it scares students and they want to feel like we're on their side as parents, educators, and, with the board. I do remember that the Anti-Hate Task Force had an amazing survey. They were able to create it over a number of months and had some great admin support. They did implement it at the end of the year and the results came out, but I haven't heard anything since then. I'm not an employee anymore, so I haven't heard anything about the survey results. I haven't seen anything coming up out of it, and I've also recently found out that committee is not meeting anymore. Seems like maybe nothing's moving forward. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention and hope that there's a lot more push to listen to their voices and continue to make them heard, give them an avenue for that social change and justice that it sounds like they're all asking for. Hopefully at some point there will be a bigger push for anti-bias, anti-racist curriculum to be put in, or some kind of coaching for staff from all the levels, because it really does start from the young childhood. As long as we're giving that inclusion from the beginning, I think that it'll help, in the next years for students to really feel safe and feel heard and feel like there's a place for all of them, no matter their background, their race, their type of thinking, etc. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. Number 14, please.
It's me. Hi, my name is Sonia. ¿Quiere venir a ayudarme? Esta noche quiero hablar en español porque sé que muchos padres de familia van a estar escuchando en sus casas.
Hi, my name is Sonia, and tonight I'd like to speak in Spanish because I know many parents are listening from home.
Esta noche quiero agradecer especialmente por las clases que comenzaron ayer.
Tonight I'd like to thank you for the classes that began last night.
Es para informar a los padres de las cosas que hay de ayudas para hacer llegar a nuestros hijos hasta la universidad.
These were classes that inform parents on the steps needed for our children to attend university.
Conozco muchas mamás que están muy contentas de recibir esa clase y están esperando las siguientes.
I know many mothers that are very happy to be receiving these workshops and are anxiously waiting for the next one.
Y quiero invitar a todos los demás que estén escuchando ahorita en sus casas que se involucren en la educación de sus hijos.
And I'd like to I would like to invite all parents who are listening from home to get involved in your children's education.
Creo que la junta directiva está haciendo más del 50% del trabajo y nos corresponde a nosotros como padres hacer la otra parte.
I believe the school board is doing about 50% putting in about 50% of the effort,
Even
and it
more.
is, or even more, and it is up to us to fill in the rest.
También quiero agradecer las clases acerca del abuso de drogas, del alcoholismo, de todas las adicciones. No pude ir yo, pero les agradezco mucho porque sé que impactó a muchas personas.
I'd also like to thank you for the workshop offered on drug, alcohol, and addiction. I was not able to attend personally, but I am very grateful that it was offered.
Y me gustaría, y muchísimas gracias que va a haber la opción de que lo van a grabar y lo van a transmitir para poderlo ver cuando nosotros podamos.
And I'm very grateful that the option of rewatching it later, because it's videotaped, is open to us too
In the future, yeah.
for the future.
Y luego también quiero agradecerles las luces. Creo que esas luces se le debe a generaciones pasadas y las tenemos que tener para generaciones futuras.
And I want to thank you for the lights. I think that we owe it. It is thanks to previous generations that were getting them, and they will be available for future generations as well.
Y luego también, nunca les he dicho, pero yo estoy muy orgullosa y muy contenta de todos los maestros que están trabajando en el distrito escolar.
Also, I've never said this before, but I am very proud of all of the teachers. I'm very happy with all of the teachers that work in this district.
Y quiero agradecerle a la mesa directiva porque saben escoger a las personas que de verdad ofrecen calidad en educación.
And I want to thank this school board because you have been capable of choosing, of really knowing how to select appropriate qualified candidates.
Okay. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sonia. Number 15, please. Is there anybody else that would like to join us for public comment this evening? Okay. Thank you for those of you that spoke during public comment. We'll go ahead and move on to agenda item 2. This is our consent calendar. And this is where the board bundles a number of items and acts upon them together in one motion through the use of a consent calendar. Consent agenda items are routine items deemed to be non-controversial for which board discussion is not anticipated, and for which the superintendent recommends approval. There will be no discussion of these items prior to the vote unless any members of the board request specific items to be removed. So with that said, may I please receive a motion?
I move to accept the consent calendar.
Second.
Board President Sarah Hines.
Yes.
Board Clerk Tess Arthur.
Yes.
Board Member Anne-Marie Rosen.
Yes.
Board Member Seabury Nockbar.
Yes.
Board Member Carl Palestrini.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Agenda item 3, these are our action and discussion and information items for this evening. So agenda item 3A is our first interim budget report for the fiscal year 2022-2023. Welcome, Yvonne.
Budget. Let's see. Is that better? Okay. So the budget is based on our best available information at each interim budget. We use actual income and expenditures along with updated information for assumptions. And so the budget is therefore always a snapshot in time in which we attempt to make our best possible financial decisions. So here we have a high-level overview of the budget where I'm illustrating the beginning fund balance, and then we're adding in the revenues there on line 5, and less the expenditures, contributions, and transfers out gives us a net decrease in fund balance. And you can see on column G that there's a $5.57 million decrease in fund balance. And at first at adopted budget in July, we were projecting a $23 million fund balance, and that's being reduced to $18.4 million. And I highlighted some of the reasons why. So on line 7 there, where we see that net decrease in the unrestricted fund balance, the column in blue, there was $3.1 million from the general fund reserves to Fund 40, but it gets reflected in current year transfers, and so it makes it look weird. It really is coming out of reserves. And then $1.4 million was for our one-time special compensation as a result of negotiations, and so that also is a one-time expenditure, not ongoing. And so those total one-times were 4.5, but we're left with around $1 million after all of that, and we're really seeing some large expenditures in special ed, our legal expenses, We moved textbook adoption into the budget where at adopted it was not there. It was reserved instead. And then transfers to other funds. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. The other thing that changed pretty significantly is our change in our restricted. So we had several large grants that we're aware of, and we've moved those into the budget. They have multi-years to spend those, and we have plans that have to be developed. So over the next few months, you'll see plans coming to the board illustrating how we'll use those funds. All right, I included a slide on the history of our fund balance, and unrestricted again in blue there, restricted in yellow, and then the combined ending fund balance. The percent that you see there under the unrestricted is a percentage of, it's a reflection or a function of total budget expenditures. And so it's 22.05%. So that's a reflection of the combined ending balance as a reflection of total expenses and transfers. And so the total board required reserve, we have our 5% required plus our basic aid reserve. And so when we look at those two things together, what our unrestricted at first interim reserve is 18.4 million, reflects 22.05%. The board required reserve is 20.61%, and so we have a difference of 1.2 million. So we are spending down some of those reserves, but we're doing it thoughtfully. We're doing it for a reason. Although we do have some ongoing expenses that we need to watch, we're still in really good shape financially. And I added one column that you may not have seen. It's kind of truncating off there on the screen, but it was a transfer of reserves to facility improvements. So we have invested our reserves in the past, and we'll continue to do that in the future as we can, because there's never enough money to fund facilities. And so as we can do some of those improvements, we'll see that happen. The first interim budget report, or any budget, is built on a set of assumptions, and so I've listed those assumptions here. One of the things on line 3 there is our unduplicated pupil count is actually increased over when I first started here almost 4 years ago. And so when I first started here, it was around 17%, and we're now at 24% unduplicated pupil count. So that shows that there's more needy children that need additional supports, and so that's an interesting percentage to kind of keep track of. We're seeing STRS, which is our teacher's pension, is staying steady over the next 3 years, a slow decrease in PERS, and so this was built at a point in time. These assumptions were listed. We've recently heard that because of inflation, we're probably going to see PERS going up again. So there's a dartboard that comes out from School Services of California, and almost everybody in the state uses their dartboard to build their assumptions. And so those were a couple I wanted to point out there. So a couple of pages of assumptions showing you what we used as factors as we updated the budget projection. This is the multi-year projection, and so once again, what you're seeing on that first slide that I had has a little more detail here, and you can look across the lines, like for example on line 11 or line 14 is certificated salaries, but C, D, and E is the unrestricted, restricted in the current year. I put some notes down there once again why we're seeing a decrease in fund balance, and then in the second year out is the 23-24 year, once again with the unrestricted, restricted, and combined. We're still projecting that we would have a decrease in fund balance there, and that is with a projection of a 5% increase in property tax. And so we have, because we've settled negotiations, there's also the increase there based on negotiations. But in the third year out, 24-25, if you're deficit spending on one-time funding, ongoing funding, which we are right now, we need to pay attention to that. But in the third year out, with an assumption of an increase in property tax as well, we come back into a positive net increase in fund balance. Okay. All right, this is the revenue sources of the general fund showing unrestricted and restricted. I went ahead and put the adopted column there just for a comparison purpose. One of the things I always like to point out is our LCFF revenue. That's what is referred to in our SACS report. LCFF revenue is mostly made up of property tax revenue. And so they're 84.64% of the total general fund. You can see the total general fund there in green makes up our budget. 67.7 million in unrestricted dollars and 11.2 million in restricted. So we have a total projected revenue of 78.9 million. The bottom table there just shows how the property tax or the amount of the property that tax comes in and the different pots of money that it comes in with. And so, like I said, it's a large part of our revenue. So we watch that very carefully and project it and talk to people and where our assessed values heading, inflation, all of those kinds of things. We're paying attention to economic factors and considering all of that as we build the budget projections. Okay, here's the use of unrestricted and restricted general fund dollars. I like this slide because it shows how much we're spending on salaries and benefits. And so at first interim, we have 83.91% of our unrestricted dollars being spent, 68.43% of our restricted dollars, and 80% is salaries and benefits of our total general fund. So an easy way to put that into perspective is every dollar that comes into the district, 80% of it goes out to salaries and benefits. And so that leaves 20% for all of the other things that we have to cover, like utilities and costs like that. One other thing here is the transfers to other funds, 4.3 million, and is contributions to routine repair required by the state. We have to put that aside 3%, and special ed is projected at 9.8 million. Just a graphical representation of what I just showed you in the table. And so the left side there is revenues. You can see how much of the big piece of the pie is made up of LCFF revenue, and then how we're using it, how we're using those dollars. Graphical representation there on the right for our expenditures. Contributions and transfers from the unrestricted general fund. We have $14.1 million that we have to take off the top and contribute. It's called a contributions if it's in the general fund, and it's called a transfer if it's going to other funds. So a couple of things that I'll point out here is you can see in special ed from adopted budget to current, we've had some really high need events that have occurred from the adopted budget, and so we had to increase the contribution to special ed by $817,000. Routine restricted maintenance was $277,000, and so that's based on 3% of total expenditures. Adult ed, just a little bit for adult ed that we have to contribute. It actually went down on adult ed by $19,000, $60,000 increase for child development. And this occurs because of salaries and benefits going up and other factors as well. So you'll see that there where the fund itself is not self-sustaining, and so the general fund has to add some money to that. Child nutrition, we actually are projecting a decrease for that because of many factors. Increased participation. Students are continuing to take advantage of the free breakfast and lunch, and that helps the program. More participation we have helps the program. And then deferred maintenance, we have a transfer that the board approved about 3 years ago that we would continue to send $200,000 to deferred maintenance for projects. And there is a couple of projects that we are saving money for that we know is coming up. That is a large dollar. And an example of that is we have to occasionally replace the turf on that field at the high school. So that's an example of that. And we have an ongoing $200,000 transfer to replace buses. So you'll see that there as well. So total of $14.1 million. I included this graph because it's one of my favorite graphs. Yeah. It really gives a good graphical representation of how the revenue has flowed into the district over the years based on property tax, our largest source of revenue. So you've heard me talk about this before, but in the earlier years of the earlier 2000s, we were having much higher amounts of revenue coming in, and then recession hit, and it never did recover to that point that we saw in the early 2000s. And out to the side, I just put that in a graphical representation, and as revenue comes into the district, that does affect our ability to provide cost of living increases in the form of raises or health benefit increases to our employees. So I jotted that down there as well. This is the fund balance information for our other activities, and so it's just another representation of the funds that we, the other funds in the district that we're supporting, and some of them require a transfer from the general fund, as I previously explained. But we do balance all of them and make sure that there's enough funds there to run the program. So opportunities and challenges. So we have new, as you saw, I mentioned, we did go ahead and budget in the categorical programming that we knew about at the time we were preparing this. We have since become aware there's another one that's about to come out to support art, another one for art and music, different than the one that you're seeing here, which is the Art, Music, and Instructional Materials Block Grant. And so I just jotted down some factors about these different categorical fundings that are coming in. And so we have to develop a plan. We want to be strategic about it. So we're really talking about the strategic planning. And once that's complete, we don't have to plan this right this second. So we want to be thoughtful about this and make sure that whatever we do with these funds is going to be the best things to support students based on our strategic plan. Increase to special education funding was a positive. It increased a little bit, not enough, but it did increase, and so that's a good thing. Our enrollment increased for the first time in many years. It went up 10 students, but I have prepared an enrollment projection, which we'll share with you at some time in the future, and we are projecting that we will have declining enrollment. No matter how I look at it, it looks like we will decline in this. Just something happens, but we will see declining enrollment, we believe, in the next few years. When you look at the multi-year projections, we leave it flat. We're not declining enough to really try to, in our multi-year projections, when we're looking at enrollment projections, we just leave it flat in ADA. As staff retire or resign, there's opportunity that exists to evaluate the needs of our sites, especially in the face of declining enrollment. We have to really evaluate what our most important needs are. As I mentioned before, we are deficit spending in the current year and next year based on the projections, and so that's where we have to look at those opportunities to evaluate. And as you know, community funded districts do not receive funding for transitional kindergarten, and that's a phased-in process, but that will affect us in the future as well. And I added just a budget cycle and timelines. And so this is this first interim report. The next time you'll hear from me, perhaps at either January or February, some sort of a budget study and going out to the staff and making sure that everybody knows what's going on in the district. But in March is the second interim report, and then we're headed into budget planning for the 23-24 fiscal year. And one last thing, I just want to always thank our Director of Fiscal Services and her team. They work really hard to do these projections and put the numbers together, and they do a fantastic job. And it's not done in isolation. We talk to the schools, and we're talking to the district office staff. And so it's also done in collaboration. Thank you.
Do you want to make a comment?
Yeah, thank you, Yvonne. One of the things I just wanted to highlight is that decrease in reserve, right? Think of that as your savings account. You build it during good times and you spit it down during lean times. And as you saw from Yvonne's favorite graph there, so you can't increase your revenue by on average 5% a year and give raises that equal inflation at 8%. So we were able to do 5% raises and use one-time money to get people through these tough years and take that out of our savings account. So I want to thank Yvonne, Craig, our union partners for really using one-time money where it's appropriate and ongoing funds where it's appropriate so that we can take care of our employees while also taking care of the fiscal health of our organization. That is the right way to use one-time funds. And so that idea of drawing down the reserves, because we had tougher years with our staff having to live through 8% inflation, we had good years where that reserve was building. So just want to thank the team for what I think was just a great way to balance the use of both types of monies.
Thank you for that, Ted. And thank you, Yvonne, for such a great presentation. We all appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, so before we get into questions and comments, we will, after board discussion, we will need a motion to approve this budget. So I just want to remind everybody that. So let's just go down the line. I'll start with you, Jack. Do you have any questions or comments on our budget?
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you for the presentation.
Okay, great. Thank you. Carl? Okay. Seabury?
I had 3. So you had a line in there for grants. That's federal and state? Okay.
Correct.
And
Mhm.
are we able to project at all whether that's going to continue or not?
Mm-hmm. Right. We do know that some of the grants are going to continue that are being tracked through a categorical program.
Mhm.
It's reflected in the restricted side of the
Okay.
of the report. And some of them have an end date. So the ones that I put up there, the most recent funding sources, those are all have an end date into the future. Some are 3 years, some are 5 years. And so we watch that. The ESSER funding, we don't expect that to continue.
Yeah.
We expect the ESSER funding will be fully spent this year. We are paying for programs out of those and
Mhm.
people. And so as we complete that strategic plan, it's going to become very important
Right.
as those grants expire. What grants can we use that are coming in that could perhaps support those? Because some of them are very generous in the use of the funds. And so using that thoughtful planning is going to be very important.
Great.
If I can add to that, so one of the things we learned at CSBA, so the state has used grants as a way to kind of spend a lot of this one-time money they had coming out of COVID. And it's short term, but one of the other things they stated, and Yvonne mentioned it in here, is literally expect no new money. Like if retirement goes up, don't expect us to supplement CalSTRS and CalPERS. Don't expect basic aid districts or community funded districts to get transitional kindergarten funded anytime soon. Although they have big surpluses this past year, they've farmed all that out in one-time money, and they're not expecting in the next few years there to be any new money. They kind of joked with all of us, like, don't ask, the answer is going to be no every time. So when this one-time money is spent, I think we could have a couple, I wouldn't call them rough years, but I think during COVID, we kind of got used to a lot of one-time monies coming in. I don't see that happening
Okay.
in the future for a while.
And that kind of leads me to my second question, which is, I don't know if we figured this out, but I mean, if we're moving forward with the stadium project, the Stadium Light project, when do we start planning for that, and where does that come from?
Mhm.
Budget for that.
Right. We started actually talking about that project a few years ago. It was listed in our facility master plan that was developed right before I got here. It was completed. And so, some of those transfers you saw, what I said to Fund 40,
Mhm.
we have set aside those funds into Fund 40 to fund that project.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Which came from reserves.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of that's already been budgeted and accounted for in the numbers you saw tonight. We don't have to go find it.
That's good to know. Okay. And then my last question is, what factors do you use to do projections on enrollment, and how far out can you go?
Mm-hmm. So we have a large history of enrollment data, and when we do our projections, you heard me say we keep those flat because we're not changing enough. If I were in a district where we're having high growth or really high decreasing enrollment, we'd probably spend a little bit more time on that in terms of the multi-year going out. But we're not in that situation. And so it just makes sense to just keep the enrollment flat as we're doing those projections. It kind of does an apple to apples comparison. And so that's basically it.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anne Marie, do you have any questions or comments?
Not at this time.
Great. Tess?
Yeah, so Seabury, you asked one of my questions, is that ESSER money, our problems aren't going away, but the money will. So do we get any money from federal? I know those are state monies, but do we get any from federal that we see could be coming? ESSER is federal, but is there anything else that could be coming federally and not state?
No, we do get federal funds. IDEA is a federal fund that supports special ed. Title I, which is 100% provided to Cooper to support their program there. It's allocated based on your percent of free and reduced. And so, and there's multiple other types of federal funds. Title II is a federal fund that we get that supports professional development for teachers and principals. And I don't know them all off the top of my head, but we do get several sources of federal funds every year that we expect to continue. ESSER's not one of them. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I just have a few comments. I want to thank you for this thorough presentation. I think every year when I hear this from you, I can't drive the point home enough that 80% of our budget goes to salary and benefits. I think there is a perception out there that I don't take our $70 million budget lightly. I understand that we are very well funded, but I think there is a perception out there that we have $70 million that is just available and ready for spending, and that, oh, the teachers and the salaries and the benefits are taken care of elsewhere. I don't think there's a realization of how much from our budget actually goes to benefits and salaries. So thank you for always highlighting that. And I also wanted to thank you for highlighting our enrollment. I have heard time and time again that post-COVID, Carmel Unified's enrollment is way down, and we lost so many students. And I appreciate you saying that our enrollment might not be way up, but it's definitely not way down, which might have been the perception during and post-COVID. So thank you for the ongoing enrollment studies that you'll continue to do. And it's helpful to understand that we have so much historical data and so much factors that go into that. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Ted, do you have any closing comments on the presentation?
No, just echo what Yvonne said. Thanks to her and her team. She always does such a great job presenting and giving you guys the facts you need without drawing it out all night like some CBOs do. So just thank you to her and her team.
Thank you. And I'm going to stick with you. Here.
Great. So with that, may I please receive a motion to approve the first interim budget for fiscal year 2022-2023?
Yeah, I will do that. But Yvonne, excellent job, really, and staff. I mean, the visuals are terrific. And, you know, I think my favorite graph is the same as your favorite graph. I want you to know that. Having said that, I'd like to make a motion to approve the first interim budget report for 2022-2023 as presented.
Second.
Board President Sarah Hines.
Yes.
Board Clerk Tess Arthur.
Yes.
Board Member Anne-Marie Rosen.
Yes.
Board Member Seabury Nockbar.
Yes.
Board Member Carl Palestrini.
Yes.
All right, Yvonne, you're sticking with us for two more. So agenda item 3B, this is resolution number 21-37. These are developer fees, public report of information.
Yes, this is our annual resolution for developer fees. We're required to present this to the board and to the public every year. And so there's a 5-year report. We just do a 5-year report every year to show how we're using our developer fees. We haven't used developer fees in the last couple of years because we're kind of holding on to it. And there's very specific reasons you can use developer fees. And so our expansion of TK is the planned use of those funds. And so they will be used. And we do have to use them within 5 years. So we have a plan for that. And with that, I'm recommending approval of this resolution.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments on the developer fees? If not, may I please receive a motion to approve?
Sorry, I have a mouthful of cookie. I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 21-37, developer fees, public report of information, period.
I second.
Board President Sarah Hines.
Yes.
Board Clerk Tess Arthur.
Yes.
Board Member Anne-Marie Rosen.
Yes.
Board Member Seabury Nockbar.
Yes.
Board Member Carl Palestrini.
Yes.
Can I just ask a clarifying question, though? Because it says the resolution is 21-37, and then underneath it says approve resolution 22-22. Did we get the right number?
It is 22, and we were just talking about that. I believe the motion was for 2137, so
Sorry, so can
if
we
someone
get
wants
another?
to amend their motion.
Can you please amend your motion for 22-22?
I amend my motion
Emotion.
My motion.
You need to talk.
See, this is why I don't do this. I would like to amend my motion to approve resolution 22-22.
And a second?
Second.
Board President Sarah Hines.
Yes.
Board Clerk Tess Arthur.
Yes.
Board Member Anne Marie Rosen.
Yes.
Board Member Seabury Nockbar.
Yes.
Board Member Carl Palestrini.
Yes.
Great. Agenda item 3C. This is resolution 22-21, authorizing agents to enter into contracts.
Yes, this is a resolution that we brought to the board last year that will be an annual resolution. It really allows us to conduct business as needed instead of waiting for a board meeting to get things approved. And so it really has just helped so tremendously. But it does allow Ted, and in Ted's absence, or Dr. Knight, I should say, it allows Sharon Ofick or myself to sign orders to do business with the district. And so I'm recommending approval of this resolution.
Great. Thank you. Questions, comments, or a motion to approve?
That's just for agreements under 99,000.
That's correct. Yes, and they will always be brought to the board as a ratified contract.
Just waiting for you to amend your motion. I would like to make a motion to approve Resolution 22-21, the authority to enter into contracts under $99,100 as presented.
I second.
Board President Sarah Hines.
Yes.
Board Clerk Tess Arthur.
Yes.
Board Member Anne Marie Rosen.
Yes.
Board Member Seabury Nockbar.
Yes.
Board Member Carl Palestrini.
Yes.
Great. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
everything, Yvonne, tonight, and your team. Thank you. All right, agenda item 3D. This is resolution number 22-23 for the 2023-24 fiscal year CSPP continued funding application. And I'll turn it over to you, Sharon.
Thank you so much. So this is an annual item. It is for funding for our preschool programs, and it's just continuation. It happens annually, and that's about it.
All right, I know we've all had a chance to review the attachments. So are there any questions or comments? Then I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 22-23 for the 2023-24 fiscal year CSPP continued funding application.
I second.
Board President Sarah Hines.
Yes.
Board Clerk Tess Arthur.
Yes.
Board Member Anne Marie Rosen.
Yes.
Board Member Seabury Nockbar.
Yes.
Board Member Carl Palestrini.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Agenda item 3E, this will be our school start times presentation. So we'll welcome Dr. Knight to the podium for this one. And just for the board's edification, this one is information only this evening. So this is the first of many pieces of information that the board and our community and our parents will start to receive on late start. So with that, I will pass it over to Ted.
Thank you. And I did remember my glasses this time, so it doesn't look like I'm glaring at Jack all night, squinting, trying to see what we've got here. So this is our update that we've been talking about for quite some time. As you guys have read, just a little background, we know that the state of California passed a late start law that we are exempt from due to our rural status. However, this board and staff, from feedback from community, kind of made a decision a little over a year ago that we wanted to see what we could do to follow the science on kind of getting our school start times more aligned with the circadian rhythm of our youth. So nothing really has changed. I know we had a public comment a while back that said this law was overturned. It has not been overturned. That is still the law, and we are still exempted from it, but we've been working on this for quite some time. You just reiterating some of the information we've talked about over the last year. Doing a process like this is not easy. It's a delicate balance between trade-offs of different groups of people. The Wellness Committee suggested this several years ago before the law was ever passed. And as Dan Paul has stated a couple times up here, we've tried to do this several times over the years and have just never been able to swing it with our transportation. When you've got kids who are on the bus for an hour, we've just never been able. I think the last time they tried to do it was even just move it 15 minutes, and we're not able to get it done without considerable trade-offs. So my recommendation, if you might remember from last April, was that we take time to inform our community about the various positive aspects of sleep, later start times being only one of those. Study the various trade-offs and then engage with our community about which trade-offs might we be willing to accept if we moved forward with a late start recommendation. So our current state, as you see up here, just to remind everybody, our preschool students start at 8:45 and get out at 12:35. With the late birds, our afternoon programs going from 11 to 2:50. River and Tular both go from 8:40 to 3, but Kinder leaves at 2. And Cooper, since they are kind of self-contained, they've got their own bus out there and their own bus driver, they run an 8:30 to 3 with Kinder ending at 2 as well. So they have a 10-minute longer day. All of our elementary schools are close in instructional minutes. You might remember the instructional minute presentation. We've got a minimum requirement that we have to meet. Our elementaries don't have a lot of spare time, but they definitely make it. Our middle school runs from 7:45 to 2:45. When they have their weekly early release, they get out at 2:10. Our middle school has a ton of extra minutes. Dan Morgan principals joke that they're going to start taking Fridays off, and they could probably still meet the instructional minutes. But they run the same schedule primarily because of transportation with the high school, which you will see starts at 7:45, gets out at 3 with an early release at 2:25. One of the things that we've discussed, and I want to mention it here where we're on here just so you can see the end times for reference, is that idea that middle and high school have had early release times for years so that teachers have time to get together and collaborate. The elementary has asked for that, and it's something we want to grant. So if you think about adding those minutes, we are going to have to, if they get out early on Thursdays, we are going to have to extend the day on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Fridays regardless. So school end times are going to change regardless at the elementary so that we can get those teachers equal professional development time as their secondary counterparts. So I want to talk a little bit about the survey that we took. You might remember a while back we brought in a professional survey company, Hanover, and the Late Start Committee, myself, Jessica, and many others have been working with them to put out the Late Start survey. The participation rates that you'll see up there, I won't go down the line, you can see them, but we had by far the greatest turnout any of us in our tenure have ever seen in the district, including people who have been here for quite a while. But we had, I believe, about half the staff, probably more than half the students who are actually eligible to take the survey, because we only send it to those students who have a CUSD email address, which, if you can imagine, our kindergartners don't. And then a large percentage of our staff members. And you see some different demographics there based on race and ethnicity, the school site, where our staff members work, so on and so forth. And all of this we sent out to the board, our community, and our staff, I believe, earlier this week. So I'm going to go over just some highlights of the survey that I think are pertinent for everyone to hear. The current start time satisfaction, you'll see at the elementary, a large percentage of both student staff and parents are satisfied with the start time. A little less so in middle school, and then certainly not so in high school. And if you remember when I gave an update on the survey results a while back, this is what we see on nearly every question. It's a cascade of elementary, middle to high, and then from students to parents to staff, almost every single one of them. Definitely significant differences by level when we ask the question, what effect do the start times have on kind of overall students? You'll see there every one of those areas that has a little red triangle is something that on our report, Hanover noted as a major statistical difference. So it's kind of one of these things is not like the others. So those that said very negative impact, you will see only 1% think it was very negative at the elementary, whereas 23% think it's very negative at the high school. So again, you see that cascading effect amongst all of these, whereas elementary, they think the start times have a positive impact. Secondaries do not. Start time appropriateness, when we ask, do you think the time that we start school is appropriate? You'll notice a majority of staff said yes, appropriate. Parents a little less so, and then students did not feel it was appropriate. So again, cascade, for the most part, staff's happy with the way things are, students are not, and parents in the middle. Just like for the most part, elementary's happy with where we are, high school's not, middle school's in the middle. So kind of in typical survey fashion, we found out a lot of what we already know. It's just scientific now, and it's going to be fun trying to make everybody happy. The impacts of having a later start time. So what kind of impact would having a later start time have on you? You see again that elementary, middle to high. High school would love later start times. Middle school, sure, why not? Elementary, no, please don't. And so this is, if you remember, trying to think of the best way to articulate this. If you remember how last year when we talked about a lot of school districts, when they just have to make this decision, they just swap start times and things like that. This is why we certainly did not want to do that, because we don't want to create a situation of winners and losers where we make one group happy at the expense of others, whether it be students for staff or elementary for secondary. The goal is to try to identify the trade-offs and find the best compromise in there. What happens if we have later release times? What type of impact would we have? You can see across the board, it's not very different, and that is because across the board, our community wants later start times, and they do not want later end times. So we want our cake, and we want to eat it too. Unfortunately, that's not really possible with instructional minutes. I kind of want to come to work later and leave at the same time every day too, but not quite sure you guys be okay with that. But so we're kind of weaving through that data right now. When you look at what the latest time you would be okay with a release, again, you'll notice a lot of red triangles because it's different by grade level. And if you look in there and try and see, I can't see the details up there that close, but you'll see the later you get in the day, the less popular it is. And we had stated earlier, if you could somehow start school in the 8 o'clock hour, you'd probably satisfy a lot of the people who want late start because you're starting the 8 o'clock hour, but you still have to get out of school in the 3 o'clock hour. The minute school gets out at 4, it's kind of like buying something for $4.99. It psychologically doesn't feel like it's $5. We saw a huge change once we said we might get out at 4 o'clock. So how do we get out in the 3 o'clock hour still? Progress that we've made this year, again, I asked for some time to study this and work to inform and engage. And so we've had monthly board presentations. Again, you've heard from Dan on the state of transportation. You heard on the instructional minutes overview. We had a presentation on the various staffing and negotiation implications of change. And then finally, how this would impact athletics and activities. We published the Hanover White Paper, which looked at what research says about later start times in rural schools. We conducted the survey. We've had a late start committee meetings. We've met consistently over the past several months with a diverse group of staff from all across our school district. We hosted the Big Sur and Kashawa listening sessions, which were both very well attended, and we got a lot of great input there. And then student advisory listening sessions where we've talked to our students about what they think. So at this point, when you look at what we've done, I'm not sure there's much else I can do to gather more feedback. I would say the last month or two, we're hearing nothing new. We're just hearing the same kind of thing over and over again. I'm not sure there's any other information we can present to the board. At this point, we're getting really close to having to make some type of recommendation. So a couple things that we can look at as we make this decision. again, data's clear. We want our cake and eat it too. So is there a way to have later start times and earlier release times, or the same release times? Maybe. So there's things that the district could do and there's things that schools could do. So to quote our board president, be creative. So creative things the district could do. We've talked a little bit about some of our bus routes, because right now from our transportation department needs an hour between the start of elementary and the start of secondary or vice versa. One of the reasons why is we make a lot of stops because we really want to be sensitive to our community. But if you see a school bus that stops on the corner of every block, you can imagine how much time it's going to take to get anywhere. So we could look at reducing stops, not cutting bus routes, not saying we're not going to pick up in this community or not, but if we are literally picking up every 2 blocks, could we make it every 3? Could we make it every 4? And could you somehow shrink the time? Because if we move high school back and then you have to move high school back or elementaries back the same number of minutes, you're going to get to that 4 o'clock hour with the release time with elementary real quick. Another thing that we could do is the board could look at revising homework policy, because if one of the concerns we've heard from students is if I get out too late, I'm not going to have time to do the homework or the 4 finals, study for the 4 finals I have tomorrow, some of those types of things. So could we look at what a lot of school districts do and actually contemplate a policy that restricts how much work a student can be given on any given night, so that way even if they have less time in the afternoon, maybe they still have time to spend with their family. Creative things that schools could do. So there is a lot of time during the day that does not count as instructional minutes. Things like lunch, breakfasts, breaks, things like that. We could serve breakfast prior to the bell, giving back some of that time. We could eliminate the morning break that we have or shorten it. Probably would not be popular with our students or our staff. But again, this decision is about trade-offs and what trade-offs are we willing to accept. So is there a way to get to the point where we could move start times back and maybe not get out so late? Possibly. I think, and before I get to questions, I want to kind of remind everybody, the goal here is to bring back a recommendation to this board at the January board meeting. One of the reasons I'm not comfortable making a recommendation now is we are still within the window where we could receive a lawsuit for the Stadium Lights project. And if I brought forth a recommendation for late start and then somehow an injunction for our stadium lights or a restraining order hits, I don't think that's best for kids. So if that were to happen, we're going to have to discuss that. But at this point, making a decision in January still gives our community a lot of time to prepare for whatever we would do. I am hosting another Zoom town hall for staff on Monday, and then parents following that. I believe the staff is at 6 and then community at 7. And so some of the things that we're looking at, again, are those trade-offs. I do not think at this point it makes any sense at all in our community to try to hit an 8:30 start like the state law requires. We've heard from our outlying communities about what a strain that would put on their families and how late kids would get home. Do I believe we can do something? Yes. I do think it's possible to get maybe an 8 o'clock or an 8:05 start time at our high school and middle school. Getting us in the 8 o'clock hour, for me, psychologically, 8 o'clock is when a lot of people think work starts. So getting our kids prepared for life after high school, maybe an 8 o'clock start's a decent compromise. And if that's only moving it back 15 minutes and there's some way between, I don't know, maybe shortening some of our bus routes, maybe, I don't know, taking a 15-minute high school break and making it 10. Is there a way that maybe we could start 15 minutes later, only add 5 minutes onto the day, maybe get elementary to where they're still getting out at a similar time? So as much as I normally, from a leadership perspective, don't like to compromise because you both lose, right? Nobody's getting what they want. I think this is an appropriate time to find a compromise and see what we can do. So I want to open it up to questions, comments, kind of get some thoughts from the board. And then after the town hall on Monday, we'll meet with the late start committee. I'll sit down with my staff and start crafting a recommendation to bring in January. Assuming the board approves that, we would then start communicating out and making the changes needed for the start of next school year.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Ted. Jack, I'll start with you.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for all the surveys and outreach you've done, especially this last survey. When I'm looking at what the data shows, it's really in line with what I've heard from my fellow students, as well as parents, and the what I've kind of received from staff, what they think too. Everything's really in line with kind of what I've heard straight, like face to face with people, which is really great. And I want to talk about you were talking about the homework policy, and I think that a lot of high school students would definitely support that. No high schooler likes homework, but I think that it's definitely, because this is all about supporting the sleep and the health of our students, and homework definitely has something to do with that. I'm wondering if you were to adopt a homework policy, how would that be enforced? Just because I know that it's going to be hard to make sure that, how you would make sure that teachers abide by those guidelines. I'd be kind of interested to see what you would do for that.
We'd ask them really nicely. It's a good question, Jack. I think it's a couple things. One, we'd obviously have to communicate out very clearly what that policy is and why. Get some buy-in from our staff. The other thing we'd have to do is if staff feels we're taking a tool away from them, like homework, we've got to make sure we're giving them the professional development that they need to find other ways to assess learning. The research on homework is very interesting, right? And nailing kids with kill and drill every night just isn't supported with research, but we might still have teachers who that's what they know. So it'd be working with Sharon and her team to provide professional development for our teachers. And I think by showing them that there are maybe some different ways out there to assess student learning, I mentioned performance-based assessment earlier with the capstone from our dance program as a perfect example. I think we can help encourage them to use some of those tactics, and then it's not like we have to go and make sure they're doing it. They would actually want to do it in this way. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it would certainly be the role of the building administrator to make sure that teachers are following any board policy. But certainly a lot easier if they understand why and they're bought in and feel they have the tools to do it in a research-based way.
Thank you. Again, with the homework policy, I think that I'm sure that the board and when it comes to creating this policy would definitely look to hear the student voice before they go and create this policy. But if we were to create this policy, I definitely recommend that after it was implemented, you continue to try and understand the student view on it, because if that policy is put into place but then afterwards students really don't see a change, I think that would be really something important to monitor after that policy was put into place. We've gotten a lot of feedback on this. I was wondering, like, in the opposite direction, how much information we've kind of given out to the community, especially seeing that, community members are asking for later starts, but then saying that they don't want the time pushed back. That kind of shows that there's like a lack of understanding with instructional minutes and stuff like that. So I'm wondering how much information we've provided to the community so they, fully grasp this subject, because there's so many variables here. That's why it's so difficult, especially with the different communities that we have. And so I was just wondering how many like informational sessions we've given to make sure that our community members also understand kind of what they're trying to tell us.
Yeah, it's a great question. One of the reasons why we wanted to slow this down a little bit and engage with the community. So we've done some board presentations, which you've seen. Those are online on YouTube. We've done town halls. We've sent a lot of information out. I am sure with as busy as everyone's schedules are, not every parent has watched every aspect of that. The one part that we were not able to do that we really wanted to do was bring in a sleep specialist and do a parent series at the high school. I think 3 of us worked nonstop to try to find people, and you either had doctors that said, read my book, I don't have time to come talk about it, or it just wasn't something they're interested in. I think from a sleep science community, there's nothing to talk about. They're like, this is the research, it's clear. What else do you want to know? They're scientists. They don't get into the part that we have to do, which is balancing the trade-offs. The science is clear on a lot of things. It doesn't mean they're all practically doable. And so that's the only part that I regret, is we were not able to find anyone to come in and host a night on that. But I still think it's something we can do moving forward, because later start times are part of it. Working with teenagers and their phones are another part. Again, working with our teachers to have students have some of their evening free, which is good for social emotional aspects. It's good, as we learned at the drug and alcohol event, that kids really should be sitting eating with their parents, talking about what's going on. It's tough to do if your day goes later, or you've got too much homework that you can't give that time up. So I think we've done what we can do. I certainly don't believe you can ever communicate enough on something like this, but other than the sleep scientists, there's nothing that I can think of that we should have done differently. I think those who want to engage certainly have.
Great, thank you. Yeah, sleep is definitely really important for students, and late start's just one component of students getting sleep. So I think that that's definitely something that we should, no matter what happens with late start, something we should definitely continue to focus on, because it's very important for student health. And thank you for answering all my questions. It was very clear. Thank you.
You bet. Thanks, Jack.
Thanks, Jack. Carl, any questions or comments?
Comments. I'm going to answer, as the former principal at the high school, some of Jack's concerns. First of all, nothing works if it isn't monitored, period. Whether it's discipline, attendance, you name it. If it isn't carefully monitored and followed through, nothing works. And the first ones to see that are the students. So one of the things we did when I was principal is we put in a testing schedule at Carmel High, which was stop testing on Friday, everybody. I mean, a kid could take a math, a science, history, anything, all done on the same day. So we collaboratively put it in a test schedule. English department, these are your days. Math, those are your test dates. So we didn't want them running into each other with overloads. But let me tell you, talk about herding cats. That was what I did. You have to monitor it, and you have to have some conversations that are not very pleasant at times. And you have to get past the definitions of what a test is. I ran into 4 or 5 page quizzes that really weren't tests, according to the teacher. But in fact, they were. So to answer your question, we also put the message out to the parents and students, if this isn't working, let us know. And guess what? They sure did. They sure did. They got back right away, and it's not happening on the days it's supposed to, and this is happening and that's happening. You have to, if you're going to do this, you have to have a collaborative effort. You have to have a collaborative agreement about, enforcing this collectively, but somebody has to enforce it. And so you're 100% right. It's chaotic when you come up with policies and there's not a lot of oversight. So I just wanted to say that. The other thing, too, is shortening the break at the high school. I don't know about that. High school kids need a little off time. And 10 minutes is cutting it pretty close, because you'd have to go from one end of that campus, maybe if you're in phys ed, to the top. And that's not much of a break. When you look at the layout of that school, we've talked about that several times. So I think that downtime, for me, would be questionable as to any kind of value with that. As far as the homework policy, some teachers have already embraced pretty solid policies and don't overdo it, and certainly don't offer homework that is not necessarily necessary. Let's put it that way. So it would be a good thing, I think, for the high school to revisit collectively, collaboratively. What should it look like? What do we expect these kids to do? Because you have to remember, they're in school all day already, and they're going to go home and start again. So it's certainly something I think it it has a lot of merit in terms of making some significant changes. I'd leave it there.
And Carl, if I may, you kind of prompted me to think one of the things I should have added to Jack's question in terms of a homework policy is we need to communicate that well with parents. And, if you have parents who are used to their kids coming home with 2 hours of homework and they think that's what's going to make them a successful adult, and then all of a sudden we cut that down, we can't have parents pressuring our teachers for more homework. It's part of what we're doing with our strategic plan and our Portrait of a Graduate outreach is helping our parents understand our teachers are not preparing our kids for the world you entered. They're preparing our kids for the world they are going to enter. And there's a lot of things we do in public education right now that make you a good student, not necessarily a good worker when you graduate. And so one of the key questions we're going to go over when we do this Portrait of a Graduate outreach is, what is the purpose of public education? Is it to help you graduate, or is it to help you after you graduate? And so there's going to have to be a lot of outreach to parents in helping them understand that your child sitting there, maybe not doing 2 hours of homework every night does not mean we're dumbing down the curriculum. It does not mean we're lowering expectations. It doesn't mean that now we're not preparing kids for college. It simply means we're following the research and the science. So
I'm going to add another word to that too. In my experience with parents over 25 years in this district is the thing that's most important to them is consistency. Are you being consistent? Are you doing what you say you will be doing? And I think parents can embrace just about any kind of a policy if they know what it is, and if they know it's been collaborative. But the big thing with parents is it consistent? Are we treating one situation different than another, one student different than another, that kind of thing? So it gets back to what happens and how do you do it?
Could I speak to that with the parents and understanding the policy?
I think President Hines would allow that.
Thank you. I think that's definitely important that the parents understand the policy. I wouldn't predict that like the parents would be upset about their children receiving more homework. I think that having the parents understand the homework policy, they'd be more likely to kind of be the enforcers of that policy, I guess, because most of the parents I talk to, my friends' parents, they also complain about the amount of homework that their children are getting. So if they understood that their children are supposed to be getting a certain amount of homework and they see that they're getting more homework than that, I feel like parents are also likely to step up and say, my student is getting, this amount of homework that's not in line with the homework policy that we could potentially implement. So I think that would definitely be an important thing, is having both the students and parents being able to understand that, so both of them so that either the parents or the students, whoever feels more comfortable, can step up and say, maybe this isn't actually being implemented.
Thanks, Jack.
Great. Thank you, Jack and Carl. Seabury, any questions or comments?
Yeah, a couple questions. So if we were to move the start time, you said by, maybe 8:05 or something, or 8 o'clock, is the sleep science behind that? I mean, if 15 minutes, is that going to make a significant difference?
According to what I've read in the circadian rhythm, anything's going to help, right? and I think some of the research that you've seen come out over the years, it obviously gets updated as people implement this. And so the research loves the time 8:30, but is that based on most starting at 7:45? Just like years ago when this first came out and it said high schools need to start later, everybody started, you remember me saying, swapping elementary and secondary start times. Now there's a whole nother body of research coming out going, now elementary's not getting it done. Elementary can't start that late or that early either. So I think this research changes as people implement this in different ways. But to me, if a teenager's circadian rhythm says go to bed later and sleep in later, why wouldn't you go as far as you can, where it's like, okay, this trade-off, maybe an 8 and 8:05 is acceptable, where an 8:30 is not. Is it worth the disruption of changing 15 to 20 minutes? It might be, if that's the only trade-off, is we don't quite get all the way to 8:30. Because like I said, based on what I've heard, I can't recommend 8:30. It is too just obtrusive to a lot of members of our community. I think it's just too much for most. But might an 8 o'clock or an 8:05 work? Maybe.
Okay.
Because the worry's not in the morning. The worry's what it does to me in the afternoon. If we can scrunch that in some way, maybe that helps.
Okay. You mentioned, with potential litigation for the stadium lights. Is that going to just completely put a halt to any further discussion about late start?
I think it's a conversation we'll have to have if that happens. So we'll know that by the next board meeting. And then I think, if we were to unfortunately have a restraining order or an injunction placed against us, we would have to decide, do we still recommend doing this, knowing, as we heard at the special meeting, you have kids right now in winter sports that are saying, as it sits right now with start time where it is, I don't have enough practice time without lights. Do we want to exacerbate that by 15 or 20 minutes? We're going to have to decide. One of the good things about the changes that have happened with CEQA, and I can't quote the law or anything, but there is now an aspect of it where litigation is supposed to happen like within a year. So I don't think this is something, I'm sure it could with appeals and so forth, but if we were to get sued, my understanding is we'd be in court within a year. So,
Okay.
If we lost, we would appeal. Maybe that drags it out another year, but I mean, it has the potential to go a couple years. And do we want to shorten that amount of practice time for students if we don't have to? And so I think we'd have to come back and talk about that.
Okay. Just a suggestion too, maybe since we weren't able to get a sleep specialist, maybe you can pull some of those resources that you have run across and make that available for parents that are interested in maybe doing a little bit of their own.
Absolutely.
information. So
Yeah, there's plenty of studies out there.
Yeah.
So we can put together kind of a little packet,
great.
put it online. Absolutely.
And then I would say, in addition, I love the idea of changing the homework policy. I would love to have a discussion about that.
You might be a popular mom at home.
I also think, in addition to that, we were talking about other factors to young students not receiving enough sleep. I would love to also have the conversations about early education about phone use and appropriate phone use, because I know that's a factor, and starting at a very young age. And I think that needs to be parents and students. But I would love to have that as a component too, about figuring out different, more creative ways of reducing the amount of stress, but also reducing the amount of screen time that these kids are on. So just food for thought.
Absolutely.
Great. Thanks, Seabury. Anne Marie, any questions or comments?
Oh, yeah, I have a couple of comments. I was there when Carl had the institution of Tuesday. Tuesday was math, by the way. So if you ended on Wednesday, Thursday, when we had a block day, you had to wait until Tuesday to test. So you got into new material. You had 3 days of new material or a review in there, and you had to wait until Tuesday to test. So I'm just putting that one out there. Whatever, I'm just going to say whatever discussions that we have about homework policy, it's going to have to involve parents and teachers, and they're going to need to come to some collaboration about that. Grill and drill is a hard way to do it. I know a lot of my math colleagues, I'm not necessarily saying anybody, but just math in general tends to be the biggest grill and drill that I have ever run across. There's ways to get around that. And I think that having more educational opportunities for teachers and parents on how to handle homework and aspects of homework would be wonderful. Because I think a lot of teachers get into that rut where they teach how they were taught, and they need to get out of that rut and say, let's take a look at where the science is taking us. That's very, very important. Another thing is just having 2 kids that have graduated from college, went from Carmel High School on. There is a huge, huge, huge ramp up of homework and stuff that they have to do in addition to all the other things from college that are taking on their time. And I think that what we need to do is not necessarily look at reducing homework, but having a way for kids to understand how to balance what they need to do. Find out what is important in their lives and focus in on those aspects and find out how to make balances. And I think that that's really an important aspect that kids need to learn. And I think that might be the best thing that they learn out of high school, not necessarily, Algebra 2, God forbid, but it's how to balance taking classes that are really hard with, wanting to go and, I'm really great at soccer and, I want to do my, Aztec dancing or my favorite class, outside of it, participate in mock trial, whatever it is. I want to figure out how to balance, and I need to balance life. And that's something about adulting. And that's why colleges have adulting classes as part of their curriculum for undergraduates. So I'm just putting that one out there. I'd also like to see a way of whatever we decide to do, if we decide to move the times, I'd like to see see if we have a positive use of that extra time or that rearrangement of time. If kids are actually going to go to bed at the same time and sleep in a little bit later, or take the extra 15 minutes and sleep in, and whether they're using that time or just saying, wow, I'm gonna I get extra 15 minutes, I will stay up 20 minutes longer and sleep in. Not and I also like to push for a school-wide sleep campaign. Take a look at really getting informed about best sleep practices, whether that is to eliminate our technological devices, turn off the television, whatever it is. Really hone in on what the best sleep practices are, because it goes back to getting good habits, good adulting habits. I can't stay up and watch a movie until 2 a.m. anymore. This is what is important to me, and getting down to the basics. And I'm just going to put that out there as food for thought. Tuesday math. Thank you.
Sir, can I do a quick follow on that?
Sure.
Anne-Marie?
Thanks so much, Anne Marie.
10 seconds worth.
Sure.
All right. Talking about screen time and phone use and working that into family structures. We've got Ryan back there, Peterson. There he is, turning around. He's been doing this for several years in his newsletters, where they designate certain weeks where you don't do that, your family time, get the phones turned off, get the computers turned off. So we do have a model of doing this. And I know if I was Ryan sitting back there, he'd probably be going, well, I think we've been there before. So I just wanted to point that out.
And both elementary schools participate in the week without screens. So River School does it as well.
He's the founding father.
Well, both schools participate in it. So I want to make sure that River School gets credit where credit is due as well. Tess, do you have any questions or comments?
That would be no screens for ice cream. Very familiar. I have a couple questions. So I'm all about representation. I was curious, how many people are on the Late Start Committee and how many are represented? Who is represented on that committee?
So how many? 20 to 30-ish, I'm guessing, right? It's on Zoom, so not everybody shows up every time, but it is leadership, classified, certificated, all across the district, preschool, elementary, middle, secondary.
So administrators too, or just staff? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
35. Sorry.
Oh, that's good. Okay. And then you talked about elementary school teachers wanting early release days for PD. Where is that data coming from, and who is a voice speaking to that? I have never heard that before, so I was curious.
In conversations, and I'm not sure when that ultimate decision was made, why elementary wasn't included in that. Elementary teachers always get less planning than secondary teachers, right? You're teaching 5-6 subjects and get 45 minutes, and in almost every school district in America, your secondary teachers get way more planning periods. So I'm not sure how that inequity happened and why it hasn't been addressed until now. But when you look at where we're going with the strategic plan and the need to get our teachers together to have common conversations, whether it's about curricular alignment, common assessment data, best practices in mental health for students, you've got to have that time. You can't expect teachers to teach all day and then come sit in the library at 4 p.m. and work on their own time. And we've got to get that done for them. And I have not heard one elementary teacher say, no, please don't give me paid time to collaborate like the other teachers in the district get. So I think it's high time we do that for them.
And then my last question is, do you get a sense through these meetings with the Late Start Committee that there is room for compromise across the board? Because obviously you're talking about the compromise, and that's the only way everyone can somewhat give a little to get a little. I mean, do you have a sense that they will be open to compromise?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's finding, again, that if you can start in the 8s and get out in the 3s just to make it simple, I think people are supportive of that. Again, from the data, there's not an overwhelming want for change at the staff level.
Right.
But that would be in any survey on any topic in any school district in America, right? Why would we want to change as adults? We don't really crave change. And so I think by continuing to inform our staff on how this could be positive for students, they'll be happy to do it. But imagine the change as, I don't know, a working parent who's a teacher and all of a sudden saying, you're now going to get out of school at 4:30. Like that is a big change for people. And I just think that's a trade-off our staff isn't willing to accept. And I support them with that. Yeah. Just like having kids in Kashawa or Big Sur get home just in time to crawl into bed is not a trade-off they would accept. And I support them in that as well. I think there is room to do something. And again, like I said, the problem with compromise is everybody loses something. So are the folks out there who want that 8:30, you have to follow the law start time, going to be happy? No. Are those people who want nothing to change going to be happy? No. But luckily for us, my job is not to make people happy. It's to do what's best for our kids. And so I think there's a compromise in there somewhere.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Tess. Oh, go ahead, Anne-Marie.
I just thought of something. Just as going back to my role as a teacher, I wanted to just impress upon those people that are out there that really vertical articulation is really very important to get a sense of where your high schooler that is sitting in your classroom who's a freshman came from as a middle schooler is very important for a teacher to know what their basis was and what they're looking at. So that vertical articulation is very, very important. So, I mean, those PD days are really important to have those kinds of conversations with, all fifth grade teachers talking to the fourth grade teachers and taking a look at that. And also having that horizontal articulation where you have grade level conversations. All the sophomore teachers get together and talk about all the problems that the sophomores are having. I'm sure that, especially given COVID, you have certain grade levels that are really, really affected and would need that kind of conversation. So I'm just putting that one out there as food for thought.
Great, thank you. I just have one question for you, Ted. So thank you for getting creative with Late Start. I know that I've been beating that drum.
Took me long enough, right?
And I appreciate you and the committee coming up with some ideas moving forward. I appreciate the thought around maybe the bus routes and shortening how many stops there are, et cetera. Has the Late Start Committee discussed doing a pilot program? So we talked about possibly shortening a lunch or shortening a break at the high school level, but are there ways that you could also shorten an elementary lunch by 5 minutes or an elementary lunch by 10 minutes and maybe do a quarterly pilot or what have you? Because I don't think that we know what the appetite is as of yet. And Jack, you would probably have the best insight on this, of what the appetite is for shortening a break or a lunch, right? I mean, we can all sit here and say what we think, but to actually experience it and to put it into process and go through the motions of it, has that been discussed at all?
So I think a couple questions in there. One, in isolation, nobody's going to want a shortened lunch or shortened break, right?
Right.
It's got to be, would you rather have a 30-minute lunch and get out 15 minutes later than what you start, or a 25-minute lunch and only get out 10 minutes later? So, right, so the idea, like Carl said, why would you want to go from a 15 to a 10-minute break? Well, where do staff, where do students, where do parents want it? It's the same day. Would you rather go 15 minutes, start 15 minutes later, go 15 minutes later? Would you rather start 15 minutes later, get rid of your break and get out at the same time? Would you rather start 15 minutes later, have a 10-minute break and only have to go 10 minutes later? I think there's a way to, it's in isolation, nobody's going to want it. It's in context. Where do you guys want to put that extra time?
Yeah, so I totally get that. And I also know that we're all creatures of habit, right? And nobody likes a ton of change. That is terribly difficult. But once you get into the routine, I mean, so saying you're only having a 25-minute lunch or you're not having a break sounds very daunting. But I was just wondering, would you consider piloting something like that so you could actually have experience getting into the routine of that and saying, wow, that was really successful. It turns out nobody's missing the break, for example, or results come back from a survey or whatever have you for the committee saying, no, we absolutely need the break. And here's all the reasons why. I'm just wondering if we're saying no without trying when we might not know what the outcome would be.
Yeah, my sense is when it comes to schedules, there's not much of an appetite for pilots, right? Especially as hard as change is. And it's easy for leaders to stand up and go, oh yeah, we could pilot this and we could pilot that. Going and getting your staff to buy into that is a completely different story. Okay. And I mean, think about it as a parent, right? Well, sorry, boss, this week I've got to, do this, or this week I've got to do that. Could we pilot some internal things? Could we ask the high schoolers, hey, for a week, do you want to try a 10-minute break? I suppose you can. But the problem is I don't see a way with transportation, with trying to be good partners with our parents. In my experience, parents do not like us experimenting with their children. And so that's how most people end up seeing pilots. And again, if it's like, wait, am I picking my kid up at 3 today or 3:05? Like, where's that calendar? Where were we at? Was this pilot 1, pilot 3? I honestly think at this point, we've taken as much input as we can. I think we've got to make a decision, stand by it, and you are right. Change is hard, and people will adapt. Whether that's we decide we should do this with schedules, this with homework, I think rather than pilot it, we've got enough input. We've got very knowledgeable, very smart staff. We've got a committee already put together that we could say, hey guys, if this is the decision, are you supportive of it? We implement it, and one of the things I've learned in this district is if you do things for a month, everybody goes, haven't we always done it that way? I mean, very quickly people get used to what we're doing, and it seems to be the way we've always done it. So we could certainly try a pilot. I don't know that we're going to glean anything from it other than frustrating people. And in my experience, you're going to have parents going, you guys should know what you're doing. Just make a decision. And I think it'd be a very tough sell for staff to change things every other week or every other month.
Understood. Thank you.
Well, and it also seems that the high schoolers are the ones that want this the most. The evidence is very, very clear in that category. So I would think they would be willing to give a little to get a little. That's just...
Possibly, yeah. And that's, again, part of it is if you want to go 15 minutes later, could you get out 5 minutes later and take 5 minutes off a break, and we find a way to cut bus stops so we give you 5 minutes back? Like, does everybody want to give 5 and then it's not too much of a trade-off for anybody? I think there's a lot of ways to do it. My job is to spend the next month working with folks to say, what recommendation do we want to bring forward? And then that's what leaders get paid to do, make decisions and implement, and we'll take the feedback. And obviously if it's a train wreck, we can change, but I think most people will adapt, and We're not going to make everybody happy because it's a compromise, but I think we can move in the right direction for our students.
Great. Thank you so much.
I think Jack's got.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jack.
Yeah, I was just wondering, we're talking about like possibly cutting down lunch. Are we not like required a certain amount of time we need for lunch, and isn't it worked into the contracts that we need like a certain amount of lunch minutes for the staff to have?
Yeah, so it's a good point. Anything that is going to kind of materially change the day of a staff member would have to be negotiated. Yeah, as Mr. Chavez explained in kind of the negotiations part, if we make big changes to things like that, we would need to go and make sure staff are okay with that. And that could even be changing the day later, right? My guess would be if we said elementary is now getting out at 4:30, you're going to have a whole lot of elementary teachers calling this guy back here saying, don't do it. So yeah, anything like that that would change, we would need to legally negotiate, but even more importantly, as a good partner, we'd want to make sure we're collaborating with staff on that, something that they support.
Thank you. And also at the high school, I think if lunch were to be shortened at all, we would probably need to scrap the off-campus program because already kids are arriving late from when they're going off campus. So I also think that high schoolers would not be very happy if their off-campus privileges were revoked as well as having their lunch shortened.
Yeah, shortening lunch is definitely not something I would be in favor of recommending. That's not a great way to get people on your side, but I do think some of the other times during the day that are counted as non-instructional, we may be able to speed up or change or alter to get 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there.
Thank you.
You know, as long as the students understand the trade-offs very clearly, that, yeah, it would be great to get out later and sleep more, but I can tell you right now, you would probably have an insurrection on your hands by trying to shorten that lunch. You have to remember, it's a pretty impactful day being on campus. And that downtime, you know, is already considered to be pretty short. I don't know, you might not agree, but that's been my experience, is you don't want to get into, as long as they know, I think you build it backwards with them. And yeah, we can get out later, but this is, you got to know this. This is what's going to happen to this block of time. That's what's going to happen to that block of time. And are you up for it?
Yeah.
And so.
Well, and that's what we've tried to do and will continue to do. At the end of the day, it's one of those things. It's like I come to work and leave at the same time. You guys decide where you want it, especially with that inside the day. I don't know that it matters to a lot of the adults what happens inside that before and after. And I think that's a good point for our students to tell us what they would rather have. They'd rather have a full 15, heck, if they want a 30-minute break and go 15 minutes later, if that's what they want, I don't have any problem with that.
All right. Thank you, Ted. And thank you, Jack and the board, for a great conversation and discussion around that. I know there'll be more to come. And for our community members and parents and the public, I would encourage you guys to attend the town hall next Monday. As Ted said, we are conducting a staff town hall at 6 o'clock, and the parent town hall is at 7 o'clock. And Jessica just sent out a Zoom and a reminder email, and I'm sure there will be another one coming. It's Friday and Monday. So look for those emails coming with all the information to join the Zoom.
And Sarah, just a question. So I know that you had recommended that if we wanted to participate, we should do it in the parent Zoom meeting. If we wanted to listen to the feedback on the staff meeting, that video will be available for us to look at.
Are you saying to watch afterwards?
Right.
Yeah, we're recording all those. So yeah, my suggestion would be if you want to participate as a board member, come to the parent one. If you just want to listen, don't do it live, do it afterwards, since you're always a board member.
All right, great. Thank you. So that concludes the first portion of our meeting this evening with our action and information items. And now we'll move on to the annual organization of the Board of Education meeting. And this is where, under the Education Code and bylaws, each year the board holds its annual organizational meeting in mid-December. At this meeting, the board is tasked with electing a president, a clerk, appointing the superintendent as secretary to the board, authorizing signatures for district approval, approving a schedule of regular board meetings and a governance calendar, as well as designating board representatives to serve on committees. We'll start with our first board item, and this is with the election of the board president. So agenda item 4A, we'll start with this item, election of board president. I'll open it up to the board for discussion and a motion and a roll call vote. So we'll go down the line here, and I'll start with you, Carl.
Okay. Well, we've done it different ways, not too many different ways. Usually it's a one-year term in Carmel Unified historically. There's been a couple of 2-year terms, which I have done one of. And, it takes a lot of time to figure out how to do this right as board president. And it may, you might think it's not as challenging as it looks. And that could be because, Sarah has made it look as easy as it could possibly be made to be. But 1 year, no. 2 is very effective. I also think that board members have been elected by their own constituencies. And let's be honest, if you live in Carmel Valley, you're going to have a pretty sizable following out there. If you live in Carmel, could be there. We've had only one from Big Sur that I can remember. But I think it's important to have that voter, investment in their candidate. Take that leadership role if they're interested in doing it. If they're not, then that's another story. So I think we're kind of fortunate in this situation. Tess has been working with Sarah for at least a couple of years now, directly. And I think she'd be great at doing this. And if she's up to it, that's who I would recommend.
Great. Thank you, Carl. Seabury, if you have any comments?
So for clarification, it doesn't have to go play out a certain way, meaning there's room for discussion. We can figure out, you could potentially be reelected for another 1-year term. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And so the idea now is just to have a conversation about, do you want it? Do you?
Yeah. So this is the space for discussion around, as I mentioned, we'll elect the board president, we'll do the clerk, we'll elect Ted as the secretary to the board. So we'll go through each one of these agenda items, and we'll have a discussion of who the board collectively thinks should hold those positions.
But before this is so awkward. I guess I would like to ask the three of you. Are you interested in doing it again? Tess, what is your feeling? And Anne Marie?
Isn't that what we're doing? Going down the line.
Yeah, we're just going down the line, but if Seabury would like to know our thoughts, we'll get there.
Because I don't necessarily have a strong opinion yet. I wanted to hear more feedback.
Okay. Anne Marie, do you have any thoughts?
My thought is to, Sarah, I think you have done a fabulous job. Fabulous job. And I know just a wee bit of how much it takes to be president, and it has taken a lot of your time. And I know that you have 3 kids, 2 of them in the high school, and demanding a lot of time. And that's why, at this point in time, I'd like to nominate Tess. Just because Tess has been following in your footsteps for 2 years. I think that she would make a great, president. And I think that she's learned a lot from you. I think that she's gone through, she has her master's in governance. I think she's proved herself to be very worthy of being president. And that's where I'm going to put my nominations, is we're putting it out there for president.
Thank you. Tess?
This is certainly awkward. I hate this attention. I'm happy to take it on. I love working with Sarah. I think you've done an outstanding job, and I'm really, really grateful for the leadership. and you're going to be a really hard act to follow, but I feel like I'm ready. So yes, to your question.
I also think that Tess would be fantastic in this role. I think it's a wonderful natural progression from the clerk to the role of the president. I feel like we have worked well together in the board leadership role along with Ted and district office staff. So as Anne Marie said, I think that you have not only your master's in governance, but you've been sitting through all the agenda settings. You have a really strong grasp on what goes into making these meetings, all of this. So I would think that you will do a great job. So my vote is for Tess as well. So if we need to have more discussion on that, that's fine. I will entertain a motion and a second, and if we need to continue discussing, we can continue to discuss before we do the vote. So do we need to discuss, or would anybody like to make a motion?
I make a motion to, I guess, to nominate Tess as president.
Can I get a second, or do we need more discussion?
Sorry. I'm sorry. I just wanted to hear what you guys, it has nothing to do with my confidence and, I just want.
That's okay.
Yeah. So I happily second that.
Great. Thank you.
Board President Sarah Hines.
Yes.
Board Clerk Tess Arthur.
Humbly, yes.
Board Member Anne Marie Rosen.
Enthusiastically, yes.
Board Member Seabury Nockbar.
Yes.
Board Member Carl Palestrini.
It's time. Yes.
Okay, I would like to congratulate Tess on being elected to serve as the next board president for the Board of Education. So congratulations, Tess. If the new board president approves, I am happy to walk the board through the rest of the agenda items, or if you would like to take over the gavel now, I can pass over the gavel.
I am happy for you to finish out the meeting because I think that is good for continuity and flow. So thank you.
All right, you are welcome. So agenda item 4B, this is the election of the clerk. So we'll go down the line and we'll do the same thing with the clerk position, and we'll take discussion, a motion, we can continue to discuss, and then a second and a vote. So I'll start with you, Carl, for election of the clerk.
Yeah, it's a little out of order, but I'd like to recommend Jack over here. I mean, this guy is something else. He'd be terrific, you have to admit. And having said that, typically the clerk is a learning position and a learning role. You work with the president, and either you succeed the president or you don't, depending on your scheduled time. And I don't know what the interest level is here of our other board members in being a clerk. But I do think, my experience tells me that we've got a really strong team with both Sarah and Tess. And Ted's still new. I mean, he's doing a heck of a job. He's in year 2. And those relationships are pretty hard to reconstruct with anybody. So yeah, it's a little out of my usual sort of perspective on these things, but I think it's important that we keep this particular team together right now, especially in these times, with potential lawsuits and everything else that we're looking at. Also, the redistricting piece, who's going to really be here in another couple of years. So I think there's just all these factors that are somewhat unstable for me. So I'm not trying to influence the vote, but I think I have to make it pretty clear that I think we've got a pretty strong team. And it's Ted that I'm really thinking about too. I mean, look, it's kind of hard coming to Carmel. Let's face it, folks. A lot of cake and people want to eat it all. What was that, Ted? To eat the cake and eat it too. Yeah, they want, So I think in order to keep him in the best possible position for advice, consent, I would go with Sarah as the clerk.
Thank you.
That's it.
Oh, sorry. Well, thank you, Carl. Seabury. So
I guess I would like to hear again your thoughts before I vote either way. I would say personally, I don't think I have the bandwidth to be in that position, the clerk position. I don't think I could do it justice just because of my work life. So I would bow out of that, and I'm very happy that we have some good potential people for that. But yeah, I'd like to hear from Sarah and from Anne Marie.
Great, Anne Marie.
Yeah, awkward. I think that Carl's suggestion of needing some continuity is a really good idea. I'm pondering that one. This is something that I've thought about for a while coming up into this meeting, so I've been pondering it. Yeah, I have the time to do it, but quite honestly, the continuity is a good way of suggesting it. And it's a very good thought. They're a very good team, that they work together well. It also brings two different aspects of our district together, Carmel Valley and Carmel, putting out there. So they have, when they're agenda setting, they have two different, perspectives that are going on there. I think that's a good idea. While I have said when I first got elected to this position that I wasn't going to be doing anything else for the next 4 years, that I was going to dedicate to it, I still think that balance, I think it's very, very important to have balance going on the board. I think we need to have all voices heard from different perspectives. So I don't know what I mean. We'll have to see if Sarah wants to go back to being clerk and having, Tess as president. That's, a step, in another direction. I don't know whether Sarah wants to do that because, she's got 2 sophomores, going into junior year is the most difficult year at the high school. And that's something that really needs to weigh on her. And I know that when she was asked to be president again, my first comment to her was, if you feel that you've got the time, great, go ahead and do it. But that's something that you're going to have to make your call. Going back to the other end of the podium, it's kind of fun down here being the, in the kibitzing section where you're going, so I'm going to put it out there. As I said, if you don't want to do it, I do have the time to do it, but that's only if you don't want to do it.
Great. Thank you so much. Tess?
I've also given this a lot of thought, and I do think we create a great balance with each other and with Ted. And I do think continuity and consistency is pretty critical right now for our district. We have a lot of things coming up that are going to require your expertise and leadership that I will relish because I've learned a lot from you watching you in this role. And I would love it if you would be interested in clerk, but you've had all the power, so but I don't know. I would love for you to stay in this role because it gives me security, and I feel like we are, we do make a really good team, and we lift each other up, and we support each other in a way that no one out there can truly understand what it's been like the last 4 years. And I feel like we have come through something extremely difficult with grace and dignity and respect, and I honor that. So.
Well, thank you. I've also been putting a lot of thought into this as well. And I do have the time and the energy and the excitement still for a board leadership role. I think that we do have a lot ahead of us, right? And I think that the continuity and the consistency is necessary. And I also feel like I've really put an emphasis with Ted and the district office, and also with you, Tess, on making sure that we keep our fellow board members informed and educated on everything that's going on. And we've put some really key best practices in place to do that. And I would love to continue that, right? I don't feel like we've perfected that. I think we can still do more. So I don't think that I will take it offensively if I'm taking a step down as clerk, because I think there's a lot of great work ahead of us. And if the rest of the board would like me to be clerk, I'm more than happy and willing and able to do it. And I think that we do have a great working relationship thus far and would love to see that continue through some of these exciting events moving forward.
That's great news.
So,
Well, I'd make a motion in that case. Everybody said what they need to say, I assume. Okay, I would make a motion that we put Sarah in the role of clerk for the upcoming term of 2 years.
I second.
Isn't it a 1-year term? Oh, sorry. It's a 2-year now? Okay.
Yeah, I think they go together, Anne Marie, if I'm not mistaken.
That's fine.
Board President Tess Arthur.
Oh.
yes.
Board Member Sarah Hines.
Yes.
Board Member Anne Marie Rosen.
Yes.
Board Member Seabury Nockbar.
Yes.
Board Member Carl Palestrini.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Would you like to hit the gavel? Thank you all for that discussion. I know these discussions are not easy and can be uncomfortable, so I really appreciate all of you and being able to have these open conversations with our community. So agenda item 4C, this is where we appoint the executive secretary to the Board of Education. And for Carmel Unified School District, our superintendent has always acted and served in the role of secretary to the board. So unless there's any discussion for this, I'll go ahead and take a motion.
I'd have to go with Jack again, I think, on this.
No, but nobody cares. We're at CB.
What if he doesn't accept?
Do you have the time to be secretary of the board? I'll ask you the same question I asked Sarah.
I'll make a motion to appoint the superintendent to serve as secretary of the board, unless there's any further discussion.
Second.
Well, you've been nominated. Think about that.
Your mic's on, Carl.
Board President Tess Arthur.
Yes.
Board Clerk Sarah Hines.
Yes.
Board Member Anne Marie Rosen.
Yes.
Board Member Seabury Nockbar.
Yes.
Board Member Carl Palestrini.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Great, thank you. So agenda item 4D, this is approving the appointments of board representatives and alternates to various organizations and subcommittees. The agenda item includes the assignments for this past year and a list of the 3 committees that are open for appointment in 22-23. We'll be looking for a representative and an alternate for each committee. I'll open it up for discussion and then we'll ask for separate motions for each committee. So for example, for Community Human Services, the motion will be for the backup and the main point person. So those two will be combined in one motion, but we'll do each committee separately. I hope that makes sense. It's a little bit clunky.
And you can state current positions, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know, Carl, if you had a chance to look, or we can pull it up on the board. So currently we have Tess and Anne Marie are the lead for the committees. So since you have 2 out of the 3 committees, I'll start with you. So Tess is the lead for Community Human Services with Anne Marie as the backup. And then Tess is also the lead for the Monterey County School Board Association with Carl. You're the backup. Did you even know that? No.
Absolutely not. Is that true? Okay.
According to our documentation.
As you can see, I'm totally in touch with what's going on around here, folks.
So before we pass off Mission Trails to Anne Marie, I'll let Tess talk about her involvement with Community Human Services and MCSBA, and then we can move forward with discussion and nomination of a point and a backup. So let's start with Community Human Services first.
Okay, so Community Human Services, which you're very familiar with, is a nonprofit that's basically is one-stop shopping for all the different services that our county might need. So it includes homeless, drug and alcohol rehab. They have some food bank opportunities, but it's shelters. It's an incredible organization. It's one of our JPAs, which basically means that several school districts pay them an annual amount to help to provide their services. They have some exciting things going on. They're opening up another shelter in Monterey called the Schumann Heart House. I went to the open house. This is a very involved committee. It's every month from 11 to 1. And if you want to go to the finance part of it, it's from 10 to 1. And it's a pretty big commitment, but it's really fun to see how far they've come and what they've done. I mean, they're a pretty remarkable organization. Yes,
We
that was
did.
John, who was
Yeah.
he was one of our Carmel High School graduates, gave the presentation on their help me, Emery, Casa de Noche Buena, which is in Seaside, and I've been there and delivered food to them, and it's a fabulous facility that's always full. It's a 14-bed shelter. Yes. They have multiple homeless opportunities for a lot of people in our community. So I am happy to step down from this one just because it is a big commitment, and I'm taking on another fairly big commitment, and I'm also teaching part-time. So I'm happy to step down from that one, but that's Community Human Services. Yeah.
Let's stop with that.
Yes.
Let's. So we'll pause on Community Human Services.
Okay.
And let's go down the line. So since Tess would like to step down as lead for that committee, is there anyone that would like to step up for lead to that committee?
I would like to step up to be first on that one.
I thought
Great.
you might. It's perfect.
And Carl, you would like to be the backup? I'm just
Yeah, why not? I mean, just put in the same amount of work I put in on the last committee, whatever that one was.
and
No, I
also-
think Anne Marie would be real good there, personally.
I agree. So in all seriousness,
And I can back it up if you want. If she
or
can.
Seabury, would you like to
Or
back up community?
No, but those kind of
Okay.
Yeah, I can do that if she can't make it for some reason. But I know she usually will.
Okay.
So that's why I'm so free with my time here.
Okay. So can I get a motion for the lead on Community Human Services to be Anne Marie Rosen with a backup of Carl Palestrini?
Can I make the motion?
Sure.
I'm going to make that motion to have Anne Marie be the lead on Community Human Services, and I shall support her as directed.
Second. Oh, I can't second. No. Oh, okay.
Second. Double second that.
Board President Tess Arthur.
Yes.
Board Clerk Sarah Hines.
Yes.
Board Member Anne Marie Rosen.
Yes.
Board Member Seabury Nockbar.
Yes.
Board Member Carl Palestrini.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right, so we'll finish off with you, Tess. You have been the lead, as I mentioned, on Monterey County School Board Association with your backup as Carl. So if you could give us some information on what the time commitment and the details for MCSBA is, that would be helpful. And then again, we'll just sort of go down and discuss who would like to be in this role or the backup.
Okay. So basically, the Monterey County School Boards Association coordinates education and training programs to assist board members in carrying out their roles to govern more effectively. And what I like about this organization is you are a part of the process of what trainings you would like to see for the county, which has been really helpful. I think that there are many opportunities that we don't take advantage of that they offer. So that's something that I would like to see more of us take advantage of some of these opportunities, because they do have some pretty incredible trainings, and it keeps it real localized, which is nice too, to learn about what's happening in our county. And this one is not as big of a commitment. It is quarterly. It's every 3 months, and it's about a 2-hour meeting. And it's a great group because it's fellow board members, so you really get to know them and their districts, and just incredibly how fortunate we are to be in ours. And I'm happy to step down from this one. I would love to stay in as the second. And I actually believe that you, Anne Marie, filled in for me once, because I actually did not realize Carl was my second. So anyhow, it's So that is a little bit about MCSBA. So it's every 3 months, it's quarterly, and it's 6 to 8 in the evenings. It's a Zoom board meeting. They've considered going back in person, and we did an event just so we could see everyone in person. We had a big lunch, and it's a really great team of people that are all board members throughout the county, and it just gives you some insight from our neighbors. It will be if they go back in person. Right now it's on Zoom, which has been really easy, right? But a lot of people still aren't super comfortable on Zoom, and it's just easier to, it's still not comfortable in person. It's just easier to meet on Zoom. And they've had higher participation as well on Zoom. So, but I'm happy to step down if someone else would like an opportunity as a first and a second even. So I'm fine.
I'd be interested in being the second, the alternative.
I'd be interested in the first, actually. I would love to have more involvement with what our county school board does and how it impacts us. I know the county works a lot with other school districts in the county. We're sort of, I think we're kind of low on their radar because we probably don't need as much support and aid and help as others. So I would love to have more visibility into this and be our representative if nobody else wants to be the lead. I'd love it.
Sounds like it's time to make a motion.
Emery, do you want?
I'd be willing to be a third on that if you wish.
A backup to the backup.
Correct.
You got it.
Especially if it's on Zoom.
Michelle, can you add another column to this, please? All right. May I please receive a motion for the lead and the backup for the Monterey County School Board Association Executive Council and Legislative Representative Liaison?
Oh man, so moved with Sarah as first and Seabury as second.
Second.
Board President Hess Arthur.
Yes.
Board Clerk Sarah Hines.
Yes.
Board Member Anne-Marie Rosen.
Yes.
Board Member Seabury Nockbar.
Yes.
Board Member Carl Palestrini.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Carl, do you want to be backup for the executive secretary since you have been superintendent before?
I can do that, Ted. I really can. I have a new phone number, so I'm not always that easy to get in touch with, but I'm happy to help. Okay.
All right, Anne Marie, you have been the lead for Mission Trails Regional Occupation Executive Board with Carl as your backup.
Yes,
So-
and I knew the Carl was my backup.
So if you could give us a little bit of insight into what you've been doing and how you've been working with this group and whether or not you want to stay on as lead or not, that would be super helpful. So
Okay.
I'll pass it over to you.
I absolutely love this program. It's morphed from the regional occupation program into a career tech ed, which is looking at expanding career opportunities for students. It's a JPA, so we have got involvement from a variety of county schools. We're now going to have the JPA person for one of two in-house, and will be 20% of the time at our district and working with us, and then 80% over at MPC. We are back in person. I would like to be lead because I have very selfish reasons. I want to go down to this new building down in King City in spring. They have a $40 million ag building. I'm in ag. I want to see what they've put out there. I want to see what that's going on. And I'd love to take Jack with me because I think that to see the opportunities and to hear the stories, you get to the kids usually have, the students usually have a meal that they serve you. They've prepared everything. They go through what they've learned, where they want to go. They have a couple of their programs come and talk about what successes they've met, where the students are going. It is very inspirational. It is very motivational. It is an incredible group of people that are working, but I will say that you have to go. We were down in Soledad, North County. We're not going to have one in Carmel, I think, until late spring. It's 3 hours of being there. You get the meal, you have to take the travel time to get down to wherever it is and then back again. And yeah, and working with, the people that are here on campus too. So it's
Great.
monthly. It's monthly or
Wow.
almost monthly.
Wow, that's great.
Thoughts on that? Anne Marie absolutely is the right person to be a lead because she has the educational background to do it to begin with. Engages in a lot of those kinds of activities herself, personally and professionally. And, I was the lead for a long time and it really went no place. It was started out as regional locker. It wasn't necessarily because of me, Steve.
You said that. I mean,
You left yourself open for that.
I'm not doing too well. Jack's been nominated twice and invited to join Anne Marie, and here I am, okay? So here's the deal. It's changing. The paradigm's changing, and Ted has talked a little bit about that, and Anne Marie's talked a little bit about it with me, and there's money there, there's opportunities there. I think there's a whole different attitude about it, and it's critical because the career tech ed stuff and the balance between the academics at Carmel High has been problematic for a long time, and it can use all the help it can get. She's the right one.
would you still like to be the backup? Or Seabury, would you like to be the backup?
No, I think
No. Okay.
Okay with you, Jack? Yeah. Okay, I could do that.
And you can come too, Carl. They offer food.
Well, I'll be
Yeah,
there.
and dessert too.
Why didn't somebody tell me that?
All right. Well,
If
I'll
you've
make
gone to the meetings.
I'll make a motion to retain Anne Marie as the lead for Mission Trails Regional Occupation Executive Board with Carl as the backup.
Second.
Board President Tess Arthur.
Yes.
Board Clerk Sarah Hines.
Yes.
Board Member Anne-Marie Rosen.
Yes.
Board Member Seabury Nockbar.
Yes.
Board Member Carl Palestrini.
Yes.
Motion
right.
passes 5-0.
Sorry. All right. Agenda item 4E. So this is approval of resolution number 22-20 to approve designation of authorized agents for the district. Unless there is any discussion, we all have read the description of this one. So unless there's any discussion, I'll just ask for a motion straight away.
I'll go ahead and make that motion. This is E. Resolution 2220 to approve the designation of authorized agents for CUSD district.
Oh, I'm on E.
Which,
E. That's okay.
on E,
Yeah, E.
correct?
Okay.
Okay, as presented.
Second.
Board President Tess Arthur.
Yes.
Board Clerk Sarah Hines.
Yes.
Board Member Anne-Marie Rosen.
Yes.
Board Member Seabury Nockbar.
Yes.
Board Member Carl Palestrini.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right. So this is our last piece of the organizational meeting / discussion. And we've all had a chance to look at the calendar of the next Board of Education meetings. So this is the approval of the schedule of board meetings for July 2023 through June 2024. Unless there's any discussion, I'll ask for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve schedule of Board of Education meetings for the period of July 2023 through June 2024.
Second.
Board President Tess Arthur.
Yes.
Board Clerk Sarah Hines.
Yes.
Board Member Anne-Marie Rosen.
Yes.
Board Member Seabury Nockbar.
Yes.
Board Member Carl Palestrini.
Yes.
All
Motion
right.
passes 5-0.
Sorry, I keep forgetting about that part. Yeah, sorry. Thank you all for that discussion around our reorganization. I appreciate it. We'll move on to closed session. Before adjourning to closed, I'll go ahead and identify the closed session items. We have 2 tonight. 5A is public employee discipline dismissal release complaints pursuant to Government Code 54957, subdivision B1. And then our standing closed session agenda item is 5B, public employee performance evaluation pursuant to Government Code 54957 regarding the superintendent. So the open session portion of this meeting is over. We will adjourn to close and come back. Thank you all for attending this evening. Thank you for those that had public comment as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if anyone would like to join us back here in the corner, we have some cake to celebrate Sarah's presidency as we head into closed session. Thank you, Bill Schreier, for that great idea.
Returning from closed session, the Board of Education has nothing to report out. Thank you for joining us this evening. See you in January. Happy holidays.